Jeff Khadebe as convener and Mike Mabuyakulu as coordinator. The other members of the previous leadership being slotted in here and there, but really taking back, being pushed to the back burner as the ANC tries to recover from that. So we'll give you some analysis on that at about 7:10. The other issue that I wanted to bring to your attention has to do with this. We've seen quite a number of instances where suspects have been gunned down and killed. And my sense of it is that it has happened with such frequency over the last year or 2 years, such that it used to be such a shocking occurrence, such that we would all be talking about it. But these days, it just happens and, we pretty much move on as society. I mean, on Monday, for example, 11 suspects in total in 2 major shooting incidents. One in Duzuma in KwaZulu-Natal, 5 suspects were killed there. And then you had the incident in Lodium involving hijacking cash and transit heist suspects, where 6 suspects were killed. Well, the South African Law Reform Commission has put out a paper that they are hoping you will engage them about, where they are proposing some changes to the section of the Criminal Procedure Act that authorizes the use of deadly force by police officers. That's Section 49. The Law Reform Commission basically is proposing that it wants that section to just make it clear that an arrester may use deadly force, that is a police officer or someone else effecting an arrest may use deadly force only if the suspect poses, and here's the underlined part, I underlined it for myself, poses an immediate threat to the life of the arrester or any other person, or an immediate threat of grievous bodily harm to the arrester or any other person. How is that different from the current situation? Well, the current situation is that the arrester may use deadly force only if the suspect poses a threat. So there's no immediate threat. Poses a threat of serious violence. So note the difference in wording. Or a threat of serious violence versus the proposed wording that says an immediate threat to the life of the arrester or any other person, or an immediate threat of grievous bodily harm. Basically, the Law Reform Commission worried that there's a possibility that some of those provisions could enable extrajudicial killings of suspects. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. And then later on in the show at about 10 to 8, we'll be in conversation with Zimbali Mncube, who is from the Institute for Economic Justice. They've come out with a number of proposals in terms of where the money would come from to fund expenditure on public programs and pushing back against the proposed 2 percentage point hike that led to the budget speech not being delivered last week. So we'll bring all of those into sharp focus at about 10 to 8 this morning. All of your regulars, we have them locked and loaded for you once again this morning. And Musa with your news updates every half hour. Rob Byrne with your traffic every 15 minutes or so. Zaikan is watching your sport throughout the morning. Dauleng Lechela has your economics, business and market news covered. Sipho Mantula with your Africa update just before 8 a.m. And through it all, we take your calls. The number to dial 086 000 2032. Your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The Wednesday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
Good morning to you, Anne.
Good morning, Thulas.
Didn't get a chance to catch what's on your bulletin this morning. What's leading?
Well, SACTU in the Western Cape is embarking on a stay-away against austerity measures and teacher job cuts, and the mass action coincides with the Premier Alan Windy's State of the Province address in Beaufort West today. The Western Cape Education Department last year announced its plan to cut approximately 2,400 teachers from its payroll. The ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula is expected to brief the media today on the appointment of the newly configured Gauteng Provincial Task Team, and the briefing follows the announcement of a reconfigured KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Task Team that was announced yesterday. The Ingonyama Trust Board expected to shed light on allegations levelled against it, and that's following the suspension of several board members by the AmaZulu King, Misuzulu Kazwelithini, and it is following allegations of financial irregularities. The matter dealing with the impeached judge, Dr. John Hlophe's disbarment from the Judicial Service Commission also continues in the Western Cape High Court, and the applicants in the court case, the DA, Freedom Under Law and Corruption Watch, argue that Parliament acted irrationally by designating Hlophe to the JSC and did not use its discretion to make responsible decisions. And lastly, former Johannesburg Mayor Kabelo Kwamanda's party leader Hanif Hendricks says he's pleased that the matter about Kwamanda has been put to rest, and it is after fraud charges were provisionally withdrawn against Kwamanda yesterday at the Protea Magistrates Court. So some of the stories that we're focusing on.
All right, and thank you for that. We'll be hearing from Ann Musa with news updates every half hour here on The Morning Brief.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
Here's how your weather is looking for this Wednesday. There's just one impact-based warning. It's a yellow level 1 warning. It says damaging wind resulting in difficulty in navigation at sea is expected between Cape Columbine and Cape Agulhas from midday. The rest of your weather looks like this. Pretoria will be fine, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon with a minimum of 16 and a maximum of 32. Johannesburg, fine, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon, 17 to 29. Mbombela will be partly cloudy, becoming cloudy in the evening, 17 to 29. Polokwane, partly cloudy, 16 to 29. Mahikeng will be partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 20 to 33. Bloemfontein will be partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 21 to 36. Kimberley will be partly cloudy with scattered showers and thunder showers, 23 to 38. Uppington will be partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 23 to 41. Cape Town will be partly cloudy, becoming cloudy by the afternoon, 19 to 26. George, cloudy with scattered showers and rain, 19 to 23. Gqeberha will be cloudy with scattered showers and rain, 20 to 25. East London will be partly cloudy, becoming cloudy with isolated showers and thunderstorms, 19 to 25. Durban, partly cloudy, 20 to 29. Richards Bay, partly cloudy, 21 to 30. And finally, Pietermaritzburg will see morning fog, otherwise partly cloudy, 17 to 30.
With Ford's Blue Sky offers, get a new Ranger XL from just $5,899 per month, including our optional service plan, only when financed through Ford Credit. 10% deposit, prime list 4.75%, 40% residual. Visit your trusted Ford dealer today for Blue Sky offers, where our Ford Family Guarantee comes standard. Limited time offer while stocks last. Ford Credit is a registered credit provider and an authorized financial services provider. T&Cs apply.
V up your February with great value deals from Vodacom Business. Meet the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra featuring integrated Galaxy AI. Get it on a Red Business 1.5 gig plan for only 1,539 Rand per month over 24 months. Enhance your deal. Add 69 Rand extra per month and get the Samsung Galaxy Watch 7 eSIM. Available in-store and online. T's and C's apply. Further together. Vodacom Business.
Hi, my name is Kamogelo and I'm a lifesaver. Through a chance encounter with the DKMS Africa team at a nearby mall, I decided to register to become a stem cell donor and potentially give someone else a second chance at life. Every life is precious, and after I was made aware that I could give someone else a second chance at life, all it took to register was 3 swabs, a quick and easy process. You too could be a potential lifesaver in the making. Register to become a stem cell donor at dkmsafrica.org.
Hey there! Need to know your TV license balance but don't want to wait? No sweat! Just send a quick SMS with your ID or TV license number to 44210. Remember, standard SMS rates apply. And presto, your balance pops right up anytime, anywhere. It's as easy as pie. So why procrastinate? Give it a try and get your info in a flash. T's and C's apply.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
It's just gone 22 minutes after 6. The death toll in Gaza is now over 48,000, with thousands more people wounded since Israel's offensive began in 2023. Amid the ongoing conflict, humanitarian conditions have worsened, especially with severe water shortages, as Israel has largely restricted water and aid supplies to Gaza. Meanwhile, the 6-week ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, which was initially aimed at negotiating a permanent truce, is on the brink of collapse, we are told, as both sides have accused each other of violating the terms. Let's speak to Dr. Kingsley Makubela, who is a risk analyst and former diplomat, as well as a public relations executive. Good morning to you, Dr. Makubela, and thank you for your time. So a ceasefire...
Good morning, Thulasizwe.
Good morning. A ceasefire is in place, albeit tentative and tense at times, but we are seeing the effects and the consequences of this prolonged fighting, as well as the harsh conditions that the citizens of Gaza are returning to. Just tell me about that. It was always going to be like this after such intense bombardment and fighting over this long period of some 15, 16 months.
You know, Thulasizwe, Israel has never had the intention to really honor the letter and the spirit of the ceasefire. Netanyahu has made it quite clear from the beginning that the intention of the Israeli government is a total obliteration of Hamas. And hence they are coming up with new conditions now. You know, they've given 3 conditions that Hamas needs to go back to the phase 1 of the negotiations, which is a huge challenge, because they've gone through that. Or alternatively, Hamas needs to look into exiling some of its leadership and its army. And the other one is stick to phase 2 of the negotiations. So those are the 3 conditions. But the disarmament of the leadership and exiling, it's a new element that Israel is introducing. And this is happening amidst the challenges, as you are saying, Thulasizwe, of severe humanitarian challenges. The UN actually suggests that about 6 infants have been killed by hypothermia because of severe cold and lack of tent shelter, that Israel has been blocking the humanitarian access to Gaza. And that's where the huge challenge is.
So we are almost at the end of the first 6 weeks, which was characterized by a release of hostages in exchange for a release of prisoners, Palestinian prisoners held by Israel. How difficult do these new conditions that you mentioned, as well as sort of the hardening of positions on both sides, how difficult does that make negotiation of possibly extending this ceasefire?
The ceasefire is likely to collapse because you can't enter into a ceasefire without a genuine desire to ensure ceasefire. That's the intention that Israel is having. I don't think Israel has any good intention to really observe the ceasefire and implement it. That's one challenge. Of course, to start talking about the exiling and total disarmament of Hamas, it's something that they know has been opposed from the beginning. This idea was mooted whilst Anwar was still alive, and it was refused at that time, and they know it won't happen. So that's why they are then creating this really serious stalemate, which is self-induced by Israel, because from Israel's perspective, the pressure, internal pressure of the release of hostages, it's somewhere alleviated. Now they are working on suspicion that there may be more hostages and so on. And that's where it's creating the challenge. I see the Americans are saying they would observe this negotiation that is going on today, because Hamas released a statement yesterday that there are about 620 more prisoners that Israel is supposed to release as the schedule of phase 2, and that they've made progress. But the humanitarian challenges remain an issue, because let's accept this. We've seen the behavior of Israel. The intention is basically to starve the Palestinian, indiscriminate starving of Palestinian, lack of water, lack of electricity, and create these harsh challenges for them in Gaza. So there's no intention, there's no genuine intention really to alleviate the humanitarian challenges that the Palestinians are facing.
So in all of this, the role of the United States, how important is it? And how do you see the United States navigating this particular conflict, and I suppose we can juxtapose it with how they are navigating the Russia-Ukraine conflict at the moment. There's a special envoy as well to the Palestine situation. Steve Vetkov is the name. But do you see the Trump administration playing that one slightly differently from how it's handling the Russia-Ukraine one?
You know, I listened to Trump when he had a meeting with Macron, and for the first time he made this pronouncement that he wants to build a legacy of creating peace around the world. And I genuinely believe that's what he wants to do. But this is one of the most intractable conflicts that he has to navigate. He has to manage both the domestic interests and the lobbies that are very strong in support of Israel, and the militarists that have been hoping that Israel can solve this militarily. Some of them are in his administration, so you'd have to manage that. But I do think the man is quite genuine to find a peaceful solution around conflicts. But that's the challenge that he has to deal with. Having said that, Thulasizwe, there are certain fundamentals that the Americans will need to change their foreign policy. And I don't think Trump now has the leverage to do that. He would need a lot of courage to really go against the Jewish lobby that is so strong in the US. But the Jewish community within the state of Israel are really divided on the permanent war because they're really tired to live in this perpetual war. They want some level of peace and so on. I mean, I was listening to the presentation at the Security Council by Daniel Levy the other day. I mean, he's one of the negotiators, earlier negotiators for Israel with the Palestinians. But he was putting up really solid issues around the challenges that Israel and the option that Israel has to take and how the Americans must manage this thing. And I hope that message really synced through the American policymakers.
And lastly, Doc, just teasing out the security of Israel, because I imagine that from the side of Israel, there'll be an insistence on some of the conditions that you're talking about, because they link that directly to the country's security, especially in the light of what happened on October the 7th. You know, the security of Israel can be integrated within the broader security of the Middle East. It can't be dealt with as an isolated event. It has to take into account the security of Syria, the security of Lebanon, the security of Jordan, and neighboring countries. And any desire really to look into security of Israel in isolation will not have the desired effect in terms of this. I mean, there's pressure building on Israel. I mean, I realize that, and I haven't seen the article, that the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim, President Ramaphosa, and the President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, have written an article about the impunity of Israel and putting pressure around the world. And these are the things that really are creating a huge problem for American policymakers. If you start finding countries in the neighborhood and countries beyond raising serious concern about the impunity of Israel, I think the pressure is building. And I don't think Israel would forever withstand this pressure. All right, thank you for that. That's Dr. Kingsley Makubela, who is a risk analyst, a former diplomat, as well as a public relations executive. 6:30, let's check in with N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, a delegation from AfriForum, Solidarity and the Solidarity Movement have met with representatives of the Trump administration in Washington. According to their statement, the delegation expressed gratitude to the Trump administration for highlighting alleged human rights violations against Afrikaners and what it referred to as the ANC's reckless policies and poor governance of the country. The chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Defence says the platform in which Lieutenant General Nchabeni Mapaha made his remarks regarding the SNDF deployment in the Democratic Republic of Congo was not correct and was uncalled for. And Eskom says it's still on plan with its preparations to provide reliable power during the upcoming winter months. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Focus on KZN, South Coast and Durban this morning after very heavy rains overnight last night. Really significant flooding around the South Coast region. We're sort of talking Port Shepstone, Margate, multiple routes under floodwater. There will be a residual sort of hangover of that this morning. So just to take it nice and easy through there, maybe get going a little bit earlier than normal to counteract any road closures and diversions that you'll need to hit. Lots of flooding and surface water puddling across the Durban region as well. Landslide on the Mangasutu Highway to Mlazi, landslide on the M4 by Westbrook, so a couple of indications that it was pretty rough. Also a crash on the N2 South at Spaghetti Junction, traffic parking back through already towards the Inanda Road. There is some flooding on that N2 as well. Joburg today, breakdown after Winnie Mandela, the N1 North just starting to slow up into that. The Mike 1's quite heavy from Ormonde up to Empire and then going through towards sort of West Avenue, sort of out in the State Park down area. Very slow. In Cape Town, lots of traffic this morning. N1 inbound Brackenfell to Kubo, get a change. M2 Khayelitsha through to Mowbray Main, and we're even queuing up already on the M3 coming through from Constantia towards Paradise Road up Wynberg Hill territory. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning to you, Zai. So for our first update, we'll start in Rawalpindi, a city whose name I just love saying in Pakistan.
Rawalpindi. It rolls off your tongue, I can tell.
Really does. All warmed up, but no play.
Oh, Mother Nature had other plans. She was the best bowler, I think, yesterday. So we were definitely... Total. Yes. Wow. That's exactly it. We were locked and loaded, and Mother Nature threw a curveball, taking all 10 wickets, abandoned. That's what the game was. Persistent rain in Rawalpindi, Pakistan. So both Australia and South Africa, who won their opening matches, now have 3 points in Group B, and a win in their final game would guarantee qualification for the semi-finals. South Africa's final group match is against England, who they'll take on in Karachi on Saturday, and it'll become another knockout match provided that England beat Afghanistan, and that's happening today. Soccer action that did happen. Stellenbosch FC moving up to 5th place in the Betway Premiership. 2-1 was their victory over Magesi FC at the Dani Craven Stadium in Stellenbosch last night. This win marks only their 3rd home victory in the Betway Premiership this season. On the other hand, Magesi's loss means they remain in the relegation zone, sitting 2 points behind Marumo Gallants, who have a game in hand. Let's hear from the winning coach, Stellenbosch FC's Steve Barker.
Yeah, as you say, it wasn't easy out there. But yeah, sometimes you got to learn just how to win in these type of conditions. It is quite often that we do have those type of wind in Cape Town. So credit to the lads for, persevering. Second half, especially, against the wind. And obviously, Magesi, quite a direct team. With some good, strong aerial players and Sibanyoni up front. So it was always going to be not easy to deal with it. So
in the meantime, Banyana wrapped up their 2-match series against Lesotho on a winning note, beating the neighbouring country 2-0 in an international friendly played at the UJ Soweto campus yesterday. Elsewhere, Ismail Sarr scored twice as Crystal Palace's sensational second half of the Premier League season continued with a 4-1 win over Aston Villa. Fulham scored at the start of both halves to earn a 2-1 win over Wolves at Molineux. The victory keeps Marco Silva's side in the hunt for Champions League qualification, moving Fulham within 2 points of Manchester City. In the meantime, Brighton strengthening their bid for European qualification, beating rivals Bournemouth 2-1 with Danny Welbeck scoring the winner. Rugby now, the World Cup winning prop Stephen Kitchoff has decided to retire from the game after suffering a serious neck injury last year. A 33-year-old prop decided to call time on his storied career after he was advised by a specialist neurosurgeon that there would be a high risk of another injury should he continue playing. The Springbok stalwart, who earned the last of his 83 caps in the 2023 Rugby World Cup final in France, where the Boks won 12-11, has enjoyed an illustrious career since making his test debut against Ireland in Gqeberha in 2016. Here's Stephen Kitchoff.
Very lucky to still be able to walk or still be able to breathe. First of all, it's I think that I can count my blessings and be very grateful that I'm still alive. But now it's, as you said, it's 100% like seeds every day and like proper planning and working towards new goals and new career. So I'm just grateful to be around and being able to talk in this room.
And finally, motorsport. Max Verstappen says Red Bull are confident they have made the right changes to their car as he seeks a fifth consecutive driver's title. Verstappen's fourth crown last year was found on a dominant period in the first 5 races before McLaren, in particular, caught up with his performance. The Dutchman drove an outstanding season to defend his lead from Lando Norris when the Britain's McLaren was the faster car in the second half of the year. We'll have your second sports bulletin at the top of the hour. For the morning brief, I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Hey, good morning to you in Dowling. So for our first update, let's start with issues coming out of the United States. Tell me about consumer confidence in that country for the month of February.
Morning, Thulas. So consumer confidence taking a sharp hit this month, dropping by 7 points to 98.3. This is the largest decline since August 2021, and the downturn was largely driven by negative anxiety over the potential impact of President Donald Trump's policies on the economy. Now, the Conference Board survey revealed that concerns about the current administration and its policies dominated the responses. Tariffs on imports, which Trump has imposed or plans to impose, were singled out as a major issue. Economists also pointed to the unprecedented layoffs of federal government workers as a factor contributing to the decline in consumer morale. The survey's findings were echoed by Christopher Rupke, chief economist at Forward Bonds, who noted that Americans are increasingly pessimistic about the outlook. Rupke warned that the economy could grind to a halt in the first quarter of the year as consumers become more cautious. Now, despite the decline, economists are not yet expecting or predicting a recession, but they do expect a period of slow economic growth and high inflation, which could then put the Fed in a difficult spot.
In company news, tell me about Home Depot expecting stronger sales growth in this year.
And this is despite downbeat consumer confidence. Thulas, the firm expects sales to grow this year, pegging total sales growth of 2.8% and comparable sales growth of just over 1%. In a CNBC interview, the company's CFO, Richard McPhail, attributed the sales growth to consumers gradually getting used to the higher interest rate environment. He noted that instead of waiting for rates to fall completely, consumers are choosing to move forward with home improvement projects. According to McPhail, home improvement always persists as consumers prioritize upgrading their homes as their lives and families evolve. He believes that as consumers adjust to the new interest rate landscape, they will continue to invest in their homes, driving growth for the company. Now, this outlook comes alongside the group's fourth quarter earnings report, where Home Depot delivered better than expected sales. The company's sales growth was broad-based, with increases across half of its merchandise categories and 15 of its 19 U.S. regions.
All right, please give us our first roundup of market activity for this morning.
So sentiment sour in the U.S. as economic data sparks slowing growth fears. With that, stocks closed mostly in the red yesterday. The S&P 500 clocking its fourth straight day of declines, down over 0.4%. The JSE in the meantime rebounding, closing mostly in positive territory. The all-share gaining 0.38%, boosted by a 0.69% increase in the industrial 25. Some weakness, however, coming in on the currency front, with the rand sitting at 18.43 to the dollar this hour, and that's from highs of 18.33 recorded yesterday morning. Meanwhile, in Asia, stocks also rebounding after yesterday's sour close. Markets mostly in the green despite the sour sentiment on the back of disappointing U.S. consumer confidence data.
Always right on the money. That's Ndauling Lechela there. You can catch more of her insights when she comes back with the second report, and that's just after 7:30 here on The Morning Brief.
Who says talking never solves anything? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
So let's move on to this story now. There has been widespread reaction to the suggestion made by the Gauteng Premier, Panyaza Lesufi, for the introduction of Kiswahili and Mandarin as subjects in South African public schools, especially in the province that he leads, of course. Lesufi says his proposal to teach these languages aims to equip students for a global economy, especially with China's rising economic influence. However, Makifeni, the chairperson of the Select Committee on Education, Sciences and the Creative Industries, has added his voice to the conversation, arguing that the focus should remain on strengthening South Africa's indigenous languages and addressing the challenges of performance in black communities within public schooling. Makifeni joins me now to take that conversation forward. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. So the argument being advanced by Panyaza Lesufi in favor of introducing these two languages is that it is important for pupils to be multilingual in ensuring that young South Africans remain competitive in Africa's shifting economic landscape. What do you make of the argument for the introduction of Swahili and Mandarin as subjects in Gauteng?
Good morning, Kokeli, and to your viewers of SAFM. Thank you very much also for the opportunity just to give me to air some of the views that we are having as a select committee. A call by the Premier of Gauteng is indeed very progressive to ensure that our kids have more languages in order to perform at a international level, correctly so, specifically Mandarin and Swahili. But in the current context, our argument is that our concentration must be on home languages in order to improve their performance, in order for them, when they are competing internationally, they are competing internationally with the necessary skill for those particular economies. Because if we are starting, by the question of other languages to the current languages that we have, remember we have 11 official languages as per the constitution, and then now if we are bringing more, then we are going to do what it has been done by previous economies, where we were compelled to speak Afrikaans for you to be able to compete on a particular job. Remember the struggle for the 1976 June student uprising. So it was based specifically on the question of home language.
Sure.
Your mother tongue. Understand yourself first, and then you can be able to master whatever barrier that will come. So, it's culture, it's who you are. So you can't be jumping because of there are other economies that are being opened internationally. What about those? Because if those markets are opening, are not going to be prepared to welcome us, and in the same form that will be opening to them, we will be repeating what we have done wrong in the past.
Is it your argument that the two can't be achieved at the same time, improving the quality of education in mother tongue South African indigenous languages, while at the same time adding to the list of foreign languages that are available as options, as subjects for students? Surely the two can be done side by side?
Yes, surely the two can be done side by side. That is why we are saying that the call is progressive, but it cannot be a primary issue that needs to be addressed. Remember, we have an issue here of young people, a mass of unemployed young people. Why can't we concentrate on the skill first? And then, because what we'll be doing now, we'll be burdening those who didn't do, who qualified without this particular language, to these two languages. And then they are, loitering the streets, have nothing. Then they will be forced now to come back and do the two languages. So we are saying, let us finish what we've started, and then we will follow with whatever that we see, what will be the need of the market. But the market currently needs a skill, the skill that we are lagging behind with. Remember, there will be resources that are going to be utilized in enforcing the call. So we are saying that those resources, those energies, everything that is going to be that can be put in place, it must be utilized to ensure that the number that you are currently having with the skill, you reskill them, you give them so that they can be able to go and compete and create employment. In fact, we cannot be a dependent country. We'll be recolonizing ourselves if we're going to allow such a situation through China now and other markets, that because they are not coming here with an immune agenda. We know that they want to make profits like any other market. So we do not want our kids to be recolonized again.
Let me bring in Temba. Let me bring in one of our listeners before you go. Temba in Kempton Park. Good morning. You want to weigh in on this conversation?
Exactly. Good morning, people. How are you? I concur 100% with your guest there. We need to understand ourselves as South Africans. We need to believe ourselves. The opposite that happened, colonized us. We need to come back and learn and understand ourselves, like the Germans. Like the Dutch, we need to learn ourselves as Zulus, as Pedis, as Sutus, and believe in ourselves. We can't allow another colonization, like he's saying. We are speaking English now because of the event of colonization. So, one, Swahili is not an African language for your own interest. Swahili is Spanigalo. And I work in Africa, I've worked in every African country. There's not even one people that are Swahili. Swahili was introduced by the Arab traders that came in here, colonizing and stuff like that. That's why it is talking to all these languages. It was a mixture of different languages, but it's not an African language. So
it has become an African language, though, Temba. If many people speak it as a home language, if many people consider it to be their primary language across multiple countries on the African continent, it has become an African language.
I hear you. Would you say English has become an African language because we are using it all over? No.
That's a tough one.
This is what we are fighting against. We are being colonized. When people bring something, it becomes a normal. Let's try and fight against that and understand ourselves as Pedis.
All right, Temba, thank you for that. That's Temba in Kempton Park. Churchill in Umtata, you also want to weigh in on this issue. Good morning to you.
Good morning, my brother. Yes. No, I think let's redirect our resources in making sure that we develop our languages into becoming languages of technology, languages of business, languages of science, and so on and so on. Because I think we have not gone fine as far as that is concerned. It has been proved that our learners get access to the skill faster, so to speak, in their mother tongue.
Yeah.
So we haven't gone fine as far as developing our languages. I think that should be the focus here, that we give our kids the skill. That's what is important.
Gotcha. Thank you for that, Churchill. So let me come back to you then, Chairperson, just as a parting shot, your reflections on what these two callers have just said, but also I would like you to then frame it as well alongside the argument that says foreign languages are already being offered within our schooling system. You see it whenever the metric exams are being administered. You will hear of French, German, Spanish being options. So why not add to that basket Swahili and Mandarin?
Thank you. Once again, the issue here is, as we have listened also to your callers, it is not to reject any form of language, but it cannot be a priority. That's what I'm trying. That's what you're arguing onto. Remember, our kids, your kids, for instance, cannot speak your own language. When you're at home, you are speaking a foreign language. You are showing that you are really decolonized. You are really colonized. So how do we decolonize education system that we are having through language? For instance, how do we skill our kids?
Gotcha. Yeah.
It is our argument. put more emphasis on what we are currently having.
100%.
If we are... Yes.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. Let's leave it there. The line is beginning to let us down as well. That's Mark Hifeni. He's the chairperson of the Select Committee on Education, Sciences and the Creative Industries.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Bringing our vehicle on Joburg Gen 1 this morning, just past William Mandela. It's quite a heavy backlog of traffic to work through coming from the Randburg side. There's also some unusually heavy traffic just extending up through the Crown this morning. I mean, it's always busy. You either get a queue to Empire or to Oxford, but it goes further than that, up to about West Street this morning, up to about that Houghton Drive, Parktown area. So the mic one just under pressure. Behind that, the M2 coming through is quite slow as well. Lots going on around KZN, some really significant flooding, South Coast area, Port Shepstone, Margate. So just watch for some disruption around possibility of road closures. The rain was particularly heavy and the flooding particularly severe overnight along that South Coast area. Flooding as well resulted from some heavy rains overnight in Durban. The N2 is underwater going into Spaghetti Junction, driving southbound. There's only one lane open, flooding on the two left lanes. Of course, the construction zone as well, coming down to Westwood Mall territory. So really big traffic on the N2. If you're driving into Durban from the airport, off-ramp somewhere like Mshlanga, off-ramp at Chris Hani, take those alternative routes and avoid that N2 going south. It really is backed up. But if you want to get through Spaghetti Junction out to Pietermaritzburg, try and come off it in none to take the M19 as your alternative. No lights on the Higginson Highway at the N2, so that's quite heavily backed up. And queuing traffic at Clarewood, that could be weather-related both ways. Very slow on that section of the Southern Freeway. Cape Town, very busy on the highways. N1 from Brackenfell to Kuba, going to change. M5's already backlogging from Parkwood, Southfield area, all the way up to the N2, and fairly thick sand this morning at Monwabisi along Baden-Powell Drive. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Fizzy drinks and fruit juices can make our children sick. Sugar is dumped into their bodies with every sip, which could lead to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes as they age. We must protect them from drinks high in sugar. Demand a stricter health promotion levy now. Sign the petition on heala.org. That's HEALA.org.
It was all good just a week ago. Life was smooth. I was paying almost nothing for electricity tokens. All that changed when I was given a big fine for buying illegal electricity tokens from illegal vendors and my neighbor for tampering with his meter. Now, I might go to jail when all I had to do was register for free basic electricity at my local municipality since I'm unemployed. Ungathatha amachance. Buy electricity legally. Report illegal electricity token sales in your area and meter tampering to Eskom on 0800 11 27 22.
Have you heard? This Friday, 28 February, something big is happening at Dis-Chem. For one day only, Benefit Card members get 30% off fragrances. Yes, your favorite brands. For him, for her, for you. But don't tell everyone. Or do. Just don't miss out. Shop in-store or online this Friday at Dis-Chem. Better beauty starts here.
The only talk radio morning breakfast show that makes sense. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
5 minutes to 7. The Department of Public Service and Administration, and this is a story we meant to bring you yesterday, the department has revealed that over 5,700 foreign nationals are employed within South Africa's public service. The department says a significant portion of these workers hail from Zimbabwe, with additional workers from countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, India, Nigeria, Lesotho, and Cuba. This information emerged during a briefing to MPs on the professionalization of the public service and foreign employment practices, and that briefing taking place last week. Let's speak to Anusha Naidu, who is the Chief Director for Human Resources Planning, Employment and Performance Management at the Department of Public Service and Administration. Good morning to you. Firstly, outline the trends for us. Where in the public service do we find the bulk of foreign nationals employed, and what are the conditions for their employment?
Hi, good morning to Thulasizwe and to our listeners. First, let's say thank you for giving the Department of Public Service and Administration an opportunity to chat with you today. Mm-hmm. In response to your question, the highest number of foreign nationals are employed in the health and education sector. And I think what is important is that when we explain the appointment of foreign nationals, it is very important to understand that foreign nationals, the appointment of them must support South Africa's diplomatic and strategic interests, such as bilateral agreements, international cooperation, and skills exchange initiatives. However, these appointments remain temporary, they are skills driven and subject to very strict oversight, ensuring that they do not compromise local employment priorities. Now, Thulasizwe, there's a number of key regulatory measures that we have in place to make sure that, despite the numbers you've given, which is negligible in terms of, the total population or the total active employment population, we have a number of key regulatory measures in place to protect local employment, such as South African citizens are always prioritized for employment. Permanent positions in the public service must always be reserved for South African citizens, permanent residents. So, it's important that all departments advertise positions. We make sure that, those positions are at least open for 2 weeks prior to the closing date, that foreign employment is limited to critical skills gaps.
Sure.
So, ideally, we would be looking at skills that are very, very scarce in the country.
So say a bit more about that then. This number that we are citing, 5,777, are you confident that these are all people who are employed for their critical skills that could not be sourced through employing a South African?
I think we can confirm that. When we look at the mandatory, skills in the country that is required, and we are obviously referring only to the public service, these skills will be in shortage. And I think what's important is it wouldn't be your entry-level skills. So it will be skills that come with deep experience, advanced knowledge, and skills that, the country would require. And I think one of the key things that we missed often with the employment of foreign nationals, as I've indicated, it's temporary, but it's also mandatory that these skills be transferred to our people, to South Africans. So there must be things like skills transfer plans in place. The goal is to reduce long-term reliance on foreign expertise while we continue to strengthen our own workforce capacity. So I think it's very important that we also understand what are some of the type of skills that we are speaking about. We could be speaking about a very advanced neuroscience as an example, where, let's say, you're speaking about neurology from an artificial intelligence perspective, and how do these two fit in? Now, we also need to understand that these are employment of foreign nationals in the public service. So, obviously, the number of persons who would want to join the public service may not be as open as the private sector. Let's take cardiothoracic surgery as an example, or clinical pharmacology. Individuals will be more inclined to join the private sector. So, the skill in the public service becomes quite limited there.
All right. Thank you for your time this morning. That's Anusha Naidu, who is the Chief Director for Human Resources Planning, Employment and Performance Management at the Department of Public Service and Administration. And Musa on standby with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30760. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, Solidarity Movement meets with Trump officials and widespread flooding across the KwaZulu-Natal South Coast. Good morning. A delegation from AfriForum, Solidaritate and the Solidarity Movement have met with representatives of the Trump administration in Washington. According to their statement, the delegation expressed gratitude to the Trump administration for highlighting alleged human rights violations against Afrikaners and what it referred to as the ANC's reckless policies and poor governance of the country. Sharon Bryce-Peace reports that the group also handed over a memorandum to the Trump administration.
The memorandum indicates that the interests of South African citizens, including Afrikaners, could best be promoted through intensified pressure on ANC leaders for pushing what it refers to as radical policies, rather than ending the country's participation in the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act or punishing South Africa as a whole. The delegation is said to have expressed serious concerns about the consequences of the Expropriation Act, racial laws, calls for violence against Afrikaners, and legislation such as the Bella Act. Solidarity's Dr. Herman also handed over a report to U.S. officials, which according to their statement highlights the wide scope of discriminatory racial legislation in South Africa.
The chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Defence, Dakota Legoete, says the platform in which Lieutenant General Nchabeni Mapaha made his remarks regarding the SANDF deployment in the Democratic Republic of Congo was not correct and was uncalled for. Lieutenant General Mapaha referred to the National Defence Force as a Mickey Mouse Defence Force in the Free State during the funeral service of one of the deceased soldiers on Sunday. This after 14 South African soldiers were killed in the eastern DRC last month. Legoete says these comments only serve to create anxiety and doubt.
A general or a senior officer like a general is a person of privilege and a person of interest in terms of intelligence language or military language. Now, for somebody of that senior level to say other things which are anti-establishment can lower the morale of our soldiers, and it can also further create a trust deficit between the state and its people. And unfortunately, is that some of these things are said in occasions which are not correct. When there's a funeral, we are mourning. We need to go there to console the bereaved family.
Meanwhile, the South African National Defence Union, SANDU, says scores of soldiers have so far returned from the DRC. The union says the group includes 2 pregnant army officers. The second plane carrying some of the injured soldiers landed in South Africa yesterday afternoon. SANDU's National Secretary Pakkie Greef says it's not unusual for female soldiers to fall pregnant while on special deployment.
I think we must remember, that with gender equality, the deployments are always going to reflect the general population of South Africa, both in terms of gender and so on. So it's bound that if you are in one base for 12 months in one place and you can't move anywhere else, people are going to develop relationships. It's nothing unusual. That doesn't mean there's a lack of discipline. Some of those people even get married later on. Obviously not sure about these 2 specific individuals. The chances that they deployed while they were pregnant or sent there while they were pregnant is very slim because they go through medical tests, which includes pregnancy tests before they get sent off to deployment.
Former Johannesburg Mayor Kabelo Kwamanda's party Al-Jamaa says it knew the charges against him were frivolous. Party leader Hanif Hendricks says he's pleased that the matter has been put to rest. This after 4 charges were provisionally withdrawn against Kwamanda yesterday at the Protea Magistrates Court in Soweto. Hendricks says Kwamanda's position in the party has not been affected by the case.
We knew it was a frivolous case. All charges have been dropped. He's never been charged. Matter was postponed month after month. I was quite happy that would be the outcome, and now the matter is closed. In the party, he occupies some of the most senior positions. He now has an opportunity to concentrate on his party work, and his mandate is to win the next 4 by-elections in the city of Joburg.
Heavy overnight rainfall has caused widespread flooding across the KwaZulu-Natal south coast. Teams are out to conduct evacuations and provide assistance to affected communities. Several roads have been badly flooded in areas in the south of Durban and on the province's south coast. Road closures are in place for several key routes. The department has confirmed that currently no fatalities have been reported. This follows the death of 9 people in the province last week from heavy rains and mudslides in the province. Eskom says it's still on plan with its preparations to provide reliable power during the upcoming winter months. The power utility suspended load shedding from 5 o'clock this morning after escalating rolling blackouts to stage 6 on Sunday. Eskom spokesperson Daphne Mukwena says the decision follows the successful recovery of generation capacity and significant progress in replenishing emergency reserves.
These developments will result in a stable power system. Ongoing planned maintenance stands at 6,660 megawatts in alignment with our summer period maintenance strategy. This increased level of maintenance is necessary to prepare for winter to further improve reliability and meet license and regulatory requirements.
Recapping the top story, a delegation from AfriForum, Solidaritate and the Solidarity Movement have met with representatives of the Trump administration in Washington. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Love is in the air, but there could be some great car insurance savings for you too. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. And make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Get monthly savings on your car insurance or cash in your pocket. Either way, you win. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just a quick one, if you're relying on How Train bus services, they were suspended this morning. How Train this morning saying their buses are operating a limited service, so they're back operating, but less than you'd expect, and there's no bus service servicing Midrand, Rosebank or Rhodesfield, so still pretty disruptive on the How Train bus side of things. The M1 south out of Pretoria, breakdown near Atterbury, quite heavy from the N4 Witbank Highway side today. Breakdown on the M1 north after Winnie Mandela, that's causing a major delay coming up from sort of Veldsfried Park up through Randburg side. Multiple routes in Durban are flooded, including the M4 at Clarewood and the M4 at Umbilo. So there's lots of delays there. The N2 underwater, southbound into Spaghetti Junction. That's a heavy queue coming down from the Queen Nundy Drive area. If you're driving into Durban, coming from the airport, off-ramp at, I would think, Chris Hani. If you're off-ramp at Mshlanga, you'll hit M4 traffic. If you're off-ramp at Chris Hani and go down through Durban North, get onto Mgena Road and go in that way, it'll work quite nicely. No traffic lights on the Higginson Highway at the N2, so very heavy coming out of the Chatsworth area. And a crash on Mega City Mlazi, Mangosuthu Highway, some heavy backlogging going on behind that one. Cape Town still fairly heavy midweek traffic on the M5 from Southfield Parkwood all the way through to Maitland. Big queues as well on the R300 this morning. Traffic currently sitting from Delft up to the Van Riebeeck Road exit to Stickland and Cales River. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SFM sports headlines. It's cricket, rain stopping play, but the Proteas still on top of the table at the Champions Trophy. We've also got exciting news with Stellenbosch FC moving up to 5th place in the Betway Premiership standings. They had a 2-1 victory over Magesi FC. All these stories and more around 7:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
It's just gone 7:10 on this Wednesday. Good morning. It's good to be in your company. We're into the second hour of the morning brief here on SAFM. Let me tell you what's coming up. We'll start with politics in this hour, focusing on the ANC's announcement of a new 67-member provincial task team for the leadership in KwaZulu-Natal. You remember a few weeks ago, the ANC's National Executive Committee instructed its National Working Committee to do the work of, quote-unquote, reconfiguring the leadership structures in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. Well, there's been much speculation. The ANC now has put that to bed yesterday, at least as far as KZN is concerned. We'll give you some analysis on that. At the forefront of that leadership, the restructured, reconfigured leadership, is ANC veteran Jeff Radebe, as well as Mike Mabuya-Khulu. So that's coming up in the next few minutes. We'll focus on that on the political front. Then we'll tell you about a report that is reporting on the prevalence of bullying in schools, right? You often see these incidents, sometimes caught on video, sometimes with really tragic consequences of children being bullied at schools. There's a new report that suggests that there have been about 548 bullying incidents this year that have been reported, and in particularly prevalent in provinces like Limpopo, where we're told some 305 cases have been reported. We'll be talking to Shahida Omar of the Teddy Bear Foundation to talk to us about some of the factors that are at play in bullying and perhaps how exactly to push back and try and arrest the phenomenon of bullying, and working together as communities, school communities, to respond to that. And then later on, of course, we'll bring you that conversation with Zimbali Mncube, who is from the Institute for Economic Justice. We'll be teasing out some of their proposals that they say government can look at instead of looking at increasing the VAT rate from 15 to 17%. That conversation coming up just before 8 a.m. Of course, in it all, I welcome all of your calls. The number to dial is 086 000 2032. Your WhatsApp voice notes, please send them to 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The second hour of the Wednesday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned. And almost 100,000 businesses trust OUTsurance.
We're in the private security industry, and by switching to OUTsurance, we save 785 rand a month. It's an extra tank of fuel, it's extra reward money that we pay our officers. When it comes to insurance, OUTsurance is our security company.
For your business insurance, contact OUTsurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover, or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, Sunday World keeps you updated. Get breaking news, sports action, and exclusive celeb scoops at your fingertips. Read it, stream it, listen to it. Sunday World, news for all, anytime, anywhere.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
14 minutes after 7. The ANC has introduced a new 67-member provincial task team for KwaZulu-Natal following the disbandment of the Provincial Executive Committee. The party says the task team, which aims to revitalize its presence in the province, will be headed by Jeff Radebe as convener and Mike Mabuya-Khulu as coordinator. Let's speak to Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, who is the director of the Center for the Advancement of Non-Racialism and Democracy at Nelson Mandela University. So the ANC, in characterizing the task at hand, Prof, for this task team, they describe it as dealing with an existential threat. Looking at the lineup and the size of it and considerations for inclusion and infusion of experience as well, would you say this is the A team that will come and actually be up to the task of responding to this existential threat?
Good morning, Makocha. Good morning to your listeners, and thank you for having me.
Let me start off by addressing this issue of an existential threat. This existential threat is not just an issue that is confronting the ANC alone. The same applies to many former liberation movements. You saw what happened in Botswana recently when the Botswana Democratic Party lost elections after 58 years in office. And then we saw the ANC also getting 40%. 40.18% after 30 years in office. Then the list goes on. So that is the main issue. This existential crisis is not necessarily an ANC problem. But to come to a question, I have a serious problem with the approach. The intention is good and is correct, that the ANC did not do well, and in fact more so in KwaZulu-Natal, which has always been the biggest province for the ANC. So they definitely had to do something. But the approach is what I have a problem with, because if you look at all 9 provinces, the ANC did not do better compared to the 2019 general election in all 9 provinces, including the strongest ones, Limpopo and the Eastern Cape. They went down in all of them. So the question then, why do you focus on KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng? The answer from the SG of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula, is that they looked at the population, the voting population, and number 2, they looked at the economic strength, and therefore they came up with it. As for the members, the seasoned members of the ANC, I have no question about that, except to say that one would have expected that they would also infuse young blood. Because one of the concerns has always been, you have members of the ANC and leaders of the ANC who have been there forever. And then why don't you mix them with the youngsters, so that when the elder ones resign or retire, then the youngsters can take the baton? Those are some of the concerns.
So KZN is known for its vibrant regions that get quite stuck in some of the, some of the internal party politics in the ANC. The size of this structure that has been announced, does it suggest to you that there was a sense of trying to manage those dynamics such that you don't have disgruntlement brewing without, all the regions and various party structures feeling that they've been included in this reconfigured structure?
Absolutely. This also explains why the ANC took so long to make the formal announcement, because we know that they've been talking about this for some time, but then groundwork had to be done before the formal announcement was made. Consultation had to happen. You would have heard the SG of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula, indicating that they had to go to all 11 regions, trying to explain to them why they were doing what they were doing. And he was also honest, at least this time, he was honest by saying that not everyone was in agreement with the decision of the NEC of the ANC. They raised their concerns, but then after discussions, then of course, they had to find one another, and then eventually they had to accept what the leadership had decided. So yes, indeed, 67 is a huge number. And then of course, we may ask the question, will there be enough money to manage the 67, given the fact that recently you heard that a number of people could not be paid in different provincial offices, and of course at the national office there are people who were not paid for some time simply because the party did not have money. Hopefully this time around they would have found money somewhere to be able to sustain the 67 members until, of course, they normalize the situation in the next election.
So an announcement coming through from the ANC's media office says the Secretary General will today be talking about the provincial task team to lead in Gauteng. There's been a lot of speculation around Amos Masondo working alongside Panyaza Lesufi. Do you expect that the shape that the provincial task team in Gauteng takes will be, along the same lines as we're seeing in KwaZulu-Natal, a large structure seeking to have as much inclusion as possible?
Ideally, Simelane, this should be the case, but the difference is that if you look at the size of Gauteng, even though they are big in terms of population, but Gauteng has never been the ANC's biggest province. And the political dynamics in Gauteng are not as complex as they are in KwaZulu-Natal. And we are also not dealing with the MK party and the IFP that are showing dominance in KwaZulu-Natal. The same situation does not apply in Gauteng. So, but for uniformity purposes, I would expect the leadership of the ANC to do the same, because they singled out the two provinces. So therefore, like you guys say in mathematics, that what you do on the left-hand side, you must also do on the right-hand side. One would expect that they would come up with a reasonably bigger structure to make sure that it is inclusive. But I don't expect it to be as large as this 67 that you found in KwaZulu-Natal for the reasons I've just stated.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you for your time this morning. That's Professor Bheki Mngomezulu. He is the director of the Center for the Advancement of Non-Racialism and Democracy at the Nelson Mandela University.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
There is increasing concern over incidents of bullying in the country's schools. According to reports, numerous cases of bullying have been reported nationwide in various schools. In response to these incidents, education experts and stakeholders are calling for increased mental health care services in schools. Let's speak now to Shahida Omar, who is the clinical director at the Teddy Bear Foundation. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time this morning. So, just in broad strokes, what's our understanding of the phenomenon of bullying in schools and its prevalence? I was looking at a report that suggests that you are dealing here with at least some 577 incidents this year alone. That is a high number.
Indeed, I think we have to just factor in the opening of school. I mean, it's not even more, it's just over a month. And then when term begins, the focus is on getting started, ensuring that children receive their books, etc. So there hasn't been that kind of engagement or stress. So the numbers are increasingly high, over 500. And if you look at Limpopo province being the greatest or the highest incidences reported, there are numerous risk factors here, and I think it's also looking, like you said, the mental health resources and support that need to be made available and accessible, because having prevention programs is not going to stop it. It's ensuring that there are support services where children feel they can reach out before it becomes too late, because we are also seeing cases. We had a case last week in Pretoria, a 14-year-old at the school, because of cyberbullying. It was tragic. It ended in a suicide. And I think these are grave concerns where we need to get together. So it's a collective effort, government departments, not only education, but we need social development as well, where there are school social workers, there are psychological services that can reach out to children, and that children feel there's a trusting and safe space available for them before they can get to that point.
Yeah, just to correct myself, the number there is 548 that we are told the incidents that have been reported this year. But nevertheless, Shahida, when we say that there should be greater mental health services to support children at school and counter the possibility of bullying arising, what exactly do we mean? Are we talking counselors in each and every school? What are we talking about, and who are we targeting here? The children engaging in the bullying, or the children who are victims?
So it's important, when we talk about prevention programs, it's addressing and targeting all the children. Because remember, the bully may have been bullied or has a history of victimization as well. So it has to address all the children. But you ask a very important question regarding the support services, the mental health services. As we speak, we know that every school does not have that kind of resource available. Sometimes what is available is also disproportionate. So there might be one mental health professional for 700 learners, or there might be mental health professionals serving a cluster of schools. Again, that is unrealistic. It's not something that is beneficial because of the demands placed on these professionals to reach out to be effective I think these are the challenges that need to be addressed, where the demand and supply is, in harmony, and the children are not subjected to this kind of harm or danger or risk.
And you've made the point that the phenomenon of bullying mirrors the context and the milieu in which children are growing up. Tell me about the socio-economic factors that contribute to this phenomenon.
Thank you for that. So if we just look at, of course, poverty, unemployment, and then we are fully aware of the scourge of gender-based violence, domestic violence, the whole culture of violence, neighborhood violence. Children are surrounded by violence, and they learn by what, they live by what they exposed to and learn. Because if you look at learning theory, how do children come about to be the way they are? Because that's how they learn to resolve conflict, challenging situations, when they see their reference groups, their caretakers, etc., dealing with it in that way. I think those are things that have to be addressed, and these are the challenges that children are faced with because they don't know different, and their way of dealing with the situation is not an adaptive or constructive way, it's a maladaptive way. It's trying to resolve the problem, and obviously it's not resolving it. But there are so many risk factors. If we look at the online exploitation, the children, of course, with the advent of technology, more and more children are engaging online for educational purposes. But again, having that access, we are finding that children are also being subjected to bullying, the online bullying that we have seen, an increased phenomenon where there's a lot more not only hate speech, but in relation to the child sexual abuse material that we are seeing. There's the sexting, the images being generated and distributed and sometimes going viral, and there's the sextorting, there's emotional blackmail, there's that kind of responses, which obviously leaves many victims helpless, hopeless, feeling immobilized and trapped. And of course, that also contributes to the tragedies that we've seen where children have taken their lives and many children have suffered as a result of that.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this morning. That is Shahida Omar, who is a clinic director at the Teddy Bear Foundation.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Right, let me take a call from Yanga in the Western Cape. Yanga, good morning. Thank you for your time this morning. Talk to me. You want to talk about AfriForum and Solidarity, the tour that they're doing in the United States?
Yes. No, honestly, I think what they are doing is just, undermining the state, showing that, look, we can go to the U.S. and meet with Trump administration, but I mean, you guys, as government, Trump administration is boycotting you, which is, I think it is unfortunate because what they are saying there, I mean, it is just spreading lies, and government, this side is trying to really explain to the Trump administration and them just going to the U.S. and repeat what they've been, saying, which is absolutely misinformation. It is unfortunate.
Yeah.
And
sorry, Yanga, were you one of those people that expected that when AfriForum and Solidarity go to the United States on this tour of theirs, that their message was ever going to change about how they feel about the policies being implemented in this country? I certainly did not have that expectation at all.
I did a little bit of hoping that really, because I mean, government is really trying to mend, relations with the U.S. So I thought this time really they will, stop with this agenda. But definitely, I mean, we are dealing with people who are not honest, who claim, they want to build this country, but they do something totally different, which is unacceptable. And knowing that they will not face any consequences, that is what I'm concerned about, because they are doing this with impunity.
Yeah, no, I hear you, Yanga. Thank you for your input this morning. That's Yanga in the Western Cape there. And I say that because I honestly didn't think that AfriForum was going to change, and Solidarity was going to change how they feel about the country's empowerment policies, the Expropriation Act, land reform broadly. I did not expect that change. I did get a sense, and as you're hearing from the reporting, that much of it focuses on we may be concerned about these, but perhaps don't exclude South Africa from the Africa Growth and Opportunities Act, sanction the ANC and not the people of South Africa, seems to be that kind of a message that they're taking to the United States. But how they feel about the policies, I think that has been made loud and clear over a period consistent enough for us to know that that is their position and it's unflinching. 7:30, let's check in with N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, the B20 says it wants to establish a pattern of implementable recommendations that extend beyond 2027. The Business 20 serves as the official G20 dialogue forum with the global business community. ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula will brief the media today on the appointment of the newly configured Gauteng Provincial Task Team, and a delegation from AfriForum, Solidarity and the Solidarity Movement have met with representatives of the Trump administration in Washington. According to their statement, the delegation expressed gratitude to the Trump administration for highlighting alleged human rights violations against Afrikaners and what it referred to as the ANC's reckless policies and poor governance of the country. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Pretoria first up, the M1 south from Stormful down towards Atterbury Road being held by a broken down vehicle. Joburg's N1, Bayers Nordia round to Ravonia stays heavy. Lots of lights down and big traffic being a high volume Wednesday. Bayers Nordia from Lifestyle to Fairland through the N1. Malabongwe from North Riding through the N1 to Straydon Park and Main Road particularly bad. Lots of lights out from Lone Hill through Machalisak towards the Bryanston area. So big traffic on all of those routes today. Crash coming out of Boksburg, or out of Benoni into Boksburg. It's a collision on the N12 by Atlas Road, causing a backlog through to Snake Road. Durban having a dreadful morning in terms of mobility. Major storm overnight last night, dropped a lot of rain and left some widespread flooding. The M4 inbound flooded at Jacobs Clarewood and then flooded at Umbilo. So there's a very heavy backlog on the Southern Freeway going into town. Flooding at Clarewood on the southbound as well, causing delays. Flooding on the N2 south going into Spaghetti Junction, so that's been a real big traffic backlog from Queen Nundy. Probably a lot of traffic ducking off and jamming up Umgena Road through Springfield Park as well. Lights are down, M7, Bel-Air Wakesley, that's heavy from Queensborough. Lights are out on the Higginson Highway, the N2, so coming out of Chatsworth, really bad as well. Cape Town Marine Drive, a busy one today as well, from Sunningdale to Racecourse Road, then Milnerton through to Milner Road in Pardon Island. Big traffic on the N7 from Epping to Bosmansdam Road, and the R300 taking traffic very slowly from Delft all the way through to the Van Riebeek exit for a turn in towards Stickland and Belleville. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, I've raised 3 girls, so I know all about lullabies and, all of these songs. There's a song that says, rain, rain, go away.
Come back another day.
Come again another day.
I know.
That didn't help the Proteas out in Rawalpindi.
Yeah, rain took the match to us. But you know what? The Proteas, we took the top spot. I don't know if that's a fair trade, but we'll take it.
Yeah.
We'll take it. All right, this was the rain yesterday, abandoning the match between the Proteas and Australia. It's the Champions Trophy clash, by the way, and the Proteas remaining top of Group B thanks to that better net run rate. The washout means South Africa's final group match will be against England come Saturday, and it's now a virtual quarter-final. And when we are through to the semi-finals, meanwhile, England will face Afghanistan today. A game that could shake up the group standings. And adding to the good news for the Proteas, Heinrich Klaassen is fit again and ready to bolster the Proteas' middle order. We had some soccer action. Stellenbosch FC moving up to 5th place in the Betway Premiership. They had a 2-1 victory over Magesi FC at the Dani Craven Stadium in Stellenbosch last night. The win marks only their 3rd home victory in the Betway Premiership this season. Stellenbosch FC coach Steve Barker.
Yeah, as you say, it wasn't easy out there. But yeah, sometimes you got to learn just how to win in these type of conditions. It is quite often that we do have those type of wind in Cape Town. So credit to the lads for, persevering. Second half, especially, against the wind. And obviously, Makhesi, quite a direct team. With some good, strong aerial players and Sibanyoni up front. So it was always going to be not easy to deal with it. So
Meanwhile, Banyana wrapped up their two-match series against Lesotho on a winning note, beating them 2-0 in this international friendly. All happened at the UJ Soweto campus. Here's Banyana coach Desiree Ellis.
We almost sort of took the foot off the pedal, and while we were playing, we said we need a second goal just to calm us down and to give us that little bit of breathing space. But we can take our hats off to these young girls. It's not easy for them so early playing two top-level games like this. And you could see towards the end of the game, last 20 minutes or so, there were a lot of tired legs. But we're happy with the growth and the progress this week.
More soccer results. Crystal Palace had a 4-1 win over Aston Villa. Fulham was their 2-1 win over Wolves at Molineux. And Brighton strengthening their bid for European qualification, beating Bournemouth 2-1. And rugby, the World Cup winning prop Stephen Kitchoff has decided to retire from the game after suffering a serious neck injury last year. The Springbok stalwart, who earned the last of his 83 caps in the 2023 Rugby World Cup, that was the final in France, which the Boks won 12-11, has enjoyed an illustrious career since making his test debut against Ireland in Gqeberha, and that was in 2016. Tennis action. Alex de Minaur suffered a shock first-round exit at the Dubai Tennis Championship. He was beaten by 3 sets by Marin Cilic, 6-2, 3-6, 6-3. The Croatian Cilic will now play the Australian Alexei Popyrin. Meanwhile, the defending Dubai champion Ugo Humbert eased past the Czech Yuri Lehechka 6-3, 6-love. And finally, golf. Kesha Lowe cemented her status as Golf RSA's #1 amateur with a come-from-behind playoff victory in the South African Women's Amateur Stroke Play Championship, while Mokhomotsi Sibata lifted the B Division title at a rainy and windy PE Golf Club. And it all happened yesterday. The 18-year-old Lowe kept her head down in conditions that turned nasty after 9 holes, epitomizing the grind needed when the going gets tough. Well, we'll get more sport to you at the top of the hour. On the Morning Brief, I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
For the second update of the morning, let's say good morning to Ndauling Lechela once again. Ndauling, tell me about the logistics group Grindrod and their forecast of a decline in annual earnings. The unrest in Mozambique was a factor in that.
That's right, Thulas, and that has resulted in about 180 to 200 million rand in losses. So the freight and logistics group warning shareholders to expect a decline in its core headline earnings for its annual period. The group's exports for its terminals softened by 4.6% to 16.5 million tons, mainly due to lower commodity prices, border disruptions, and low container handling throughput. The group's overall performance was impacted by temporary disruptions at the Lubombo border, which resulted in a 4.4 million ton decrease in volume and a 180 to 200 million decrease in headline earnings, as I mentioned. And so Grindrod's profit is now expected to fall by 25 to 28%. While its non-core business will be hit by fair value and expected credit losses of 522 million rand. Despite the challenges, though, Grindrod remains optimistic about its prospects, citing its unique position to take advantage of opportunities in the logistics space. The group has identified a growth pipeline of 8 billion rand across its core portfolio and is participating in the open access slots process across the rail network in the country.
So in industry news, tell me about the poultry industry's warning of another bird flu outbreak. That is concerning, yeah?
That's right, Tulas, and they are preparing for a possible bird flu outbreak. The SA Poultry Association is warning that if nothing is done, the industry could face big problems, including financial losses, food shortages, and environmental damage. The association's biggest concerns is vaccines in particular. The industry is still recovering, of course, from a major outbreak in 2023, which resulted in over 9.6 million culled birds, amounting to losses of about 9.5 billion rand. Recently, we had JC listed company Quantum Foods, who owns New Laid Eggs, also sounding the alarm warning of another bird flu bout, as there's been outbreaks in North Africa, Europe, and the US. Now, the sector, of course, an important one for the country, providing over 58,000 jobs. It is, however, vulnerable because there is no vaccine available for a certain type of bird flu, and it may take another year to get one. Now, SAPA says the government's solution to import more poultry products has not helped local farmers and has made things worse. And so the industry is calling for urgent action to prevent another bout of bird flu, as well as just that disaster that's taking place in that sector. They want the government to help farmers protect their birds and compensate them if the birds get sick.
All right, scan the world of markets for us once again in Tauleng and tell us how it's looking.
Kicking things off in Asia, stocks trending high on that front as investors brushed aside concerns about a U.S. economic slowdown. With that, the Hong Kong Hang Seng making the biggest gains, benefiting from an AI rally. The indice jumping the most on that front is, of course, the Hong Kong Hang Seng, surging over 3% this hour. Meanwhile, in Wall Street, futures are in the green, rebounding from yesterday's downbeat close following sour consumer morale data. Then coming back home, sentiment recovering, local markets mostly in the green, the All Share gaining 0.38% in yesterday's trading session. On the currency front, the rand slightly on the back foot despite dollar weakness. The local unit currently trading at 18.42 to the dollar this hour.
All right, Ntauleng, thank you for that. That's Ntauleng Lechela. She'll be back with one more update for you coming up just before the resumption of trade in on the JSE on this Wednesday. And that's coming up just after 8:30.
Africa Update on SAFM.
Standing in for Sipho Mantula this morning is Lerato Tsebe, an independent African researcher. Good morning to you, Lerato. Let's start with the Rwanda DRC situation. The United Kingdom has been wagging a finger at Rwanda over their actions in the DRC. Now we're hearing from the Rwandan government responding to those threats, including threats of sanctions.
Morning to us and morning to your listeners. Yes, indeed. It is not raining but pouring in Kigali, politically and diplomatically speaking, that is. The government of Rwanda has responded to the measures that were announced by the government of the United Kingdom that has imposed sanctions on the government as a whole. The government of Rwanda is referring to the measures as punitive and regrettable, alleging that the UK has chosen a side and that the government of the DRC, quote, has a lot more to answer for than any other party within the DRC itself and in the region. This particular batch of sanctions includes a suspension of direct bilateral aid, financial aid to the Rwandan government, excluding support to what they are saying is the poorest and most vulnerable. They've suspended future defense training assistance to Rwanda, and they are having an immediate review of defense export licenses to the Rwandan Defense Force. The Rwandan government statement goes on to say to us that Rwanda continues to insist on security guarantees for the country and that it remains committed to working with partner states and African-led mediation processes.
Yeah, and this has all got to do with Rwanda's support for the M23 rebels in the DRC.
Absolutely, Tulas, absolutely.
Yeah. Speaking of the DRC, Lerato, I see that it's caught the attention of the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. Tell me about the prosecutor's visit to the DRC.
Yeah, a bit of a surprise visit to us. The Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Mr. Imran Khan, is in Kinshasa. He arrived yesterday and he met with President Felix Tshisekedi as well as members of the Congolese government and the UN Special Representative for the DRC, Ms. Bintu Keita. Now you must understand to us that it's been alleged that there's about 7,000 civilians that have died in the eastern DRC in the last month alone. So what's been going on in that region of the country has obviously caught the attention of the ICC. The Office of the Prosecutor is launching an urgent call for more information from state parties, non-state parties, civil societies, and journalists, if they could please provide them with evidence that they've gathered on allegations of international crimes against humanities against all parties that are acting in the DRC at present. So the situation is quite serious right now.
Yeah, definitely. So in other news, Lerato, tell me about the African Leaders Initiative on Debt. You're saying they've met with the South African president and that meeting has taken place in Cape Town. What's on the agenda there?
Yeah, obviously, as you know, that it is now the second week of the G20 schedule that South Africa is hosting. On the sidelines of the B20, which is the Business 20, there is a new grouping called the African Leaders Initiative on Debt Relief that met with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa yesterday. It's a project that advocates for comprehensive debt relief for heavily indebted African nations. The statement out of the presidency states that the members of the grouping include President Olusegun Obasanjo of Nigeria, President Macky Sall of Senegal, former president of Malawi, Joyce Banda, Jakaya Kikwete of Tanzania, Addo Akufo-Addo of Ghana, and former Mauritian President Gurab Fakim. This initiative is essentially intended to assist many of these nations that are facing the most severe debt crises in decades and making it difficult for them to invest in infrastructure programs that are necessary for sustainable growth and climate adaptation. So the initiative is quite, we must applaud all African initiatives, I think, at present, and that the diplomatic efforts are inclusive of former African heads of state whom are not just sitting at home and doing nothing, but are being very much brought in with their years of experience to try and assist and alleviate some of the challenges on the continent.
Yeah, you'll hardly find former heads of states sitting at home and idling. We tend to turn to them from time to time, and you're absolutely right. Their role continues to be important. Lerato, thank you. That's Lerato Tsebe, who is an independent African researcher.
086 000 2032.
All right, let's take one or two of your calls. Let me start with a call from Mulatelo. Mulatelo, good morning. You want to talk to me about the SANDF this morning. What about them?
Yeah, the statement made by Sakutanda was very much disappointing. Look,
Mulatelo, I'm sorry. Please, could you hold your phone slightly differently? It seems to be a bit muzzled, and I want to hear you loud and clear. Please give it another go. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about this thing of Laguta Loga, the statement that he made yesterday about Brigadier Mapaha. Look, I don't think that Laguta Loga has been in the head of army. The man was presenting the situation in South Africa. He's a soldier by soul, by blood. And he knows what he's talking about. And he knows what we know. What he's talking about is Mapaya. What South Africa knows about it. But
yeah, Mulatelo, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mulatelo. Your line is just letting us down. Let's see if we can get you on a better line, because we do want to hear what you have to say, but really struggling to hear you at the moment. Hassan, good morning in Joburg. You want to talk about AfriForum?
Yeah, good morning. I think part of my concern has been consistent. I mean, before, when the media covered AfriForum and groups like that, they went with the self-description of these groups. So they used to be called sometimes a civil society or a human rights body. Now I hear in this last news, they talk about, and they talk about Solidarity State and others, and they say and the solidarity movements. So giving the impression that in line with the definition of solidarity, as Madiba said, being in the world for the other, that they stand for all of us. If you look at the memorandum that they issued, they are attacking everything that we hold dear, that we want transformation. They're going on to that. I've heard the Director General of DIRCO say there's no walking back on the positions that they've taken. In fact, they've strengthened it. They're against the Bella Act. They're against any redress measures. And as such, really, these guys have to become accountable. They are, as the DG said in another interview elsewhere, they were almost secessionist in some of the demands that they make. And they also put pressure that the ANC, the political party here, should be the one that is under pressure by Trump and others. That interference really is calling for civil war.
All right, Hassan, let's leave it there. I hear the point you're making about solidarity movement. I suppose they say they are a movement in the sense of the various organizations coalescing around their agenda and worldview. I suppose they're not using it in the sense that you are thinking of solidarity in the traditional sense that you and I would know it, but rather solidarity movement in the sense of the organizations that are involved in pursuing their agenda. Chiridzi in Midrand, also on AfriForum. Good morning.
Morning to you, Thulas, and the listeners. What I wanted to let majority of us to start looking at, especially when we are looking at what AfriForum is doing, and majority of us, yes, we are saying they are wrong for doing what they are doing. But these are the results of lack of accountability that has led to lawlessness in South Africa and people no longer having trust in their government and deciding to start taking things upon themselves to find solutions that suits their interest. Because even if, like we were to say, let us send the officials themselves to go and meet with the U.S. government, we will still come back with unsatisfied answers and things that they have done and deals that they have entered into on our behalf. So I think as South Africans, we must start relooking at this democratic mechanism of ushering governance in our country, because it would seem now that we have entered into a space where it is everybody is the rule of their own.
So you say there's a trust deficit, basically.
Yes, there's a trust deficit. I mean, even the president can't even sign a law into existence and people agree that yes, the president exercised his power, because we no longer trust his power. We no longer trust his intelligence. And like even now, when you hear about people talking about the General Mapaga saying this, he should have said that, it's just the result of lack of accountability that has been allowed to thrive in our country to such a point that no one trusts anyone anymore.
All right, gotcha. Thank you. That's Chiridzi in Midrand. They're making that point. By the way, let me just quickly mention, I saw one of you asking for clarity, which general is which, confusion there about General Mapaga and General Mapwanya. So here's the difference. Lieutenant General Nchabeni Mapaga is the one who made the comments at that funeral. He is different from General Rudzani Mapwanya, who is the chief of the SANDF. Mapwanya, Mapaga, two different names, and I get why you would ask that question. Thank you for that. We'll take more of your calls and WhatsApp voice notes a bit later on the show.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still slow coming from Pretoria's Montana side this morning. The Elon ramp straight into traffic at Whakamakato, and you stay in that to about Rigel Avenue. An earlier breakdown at Atterbury, largely causing that backlog. The N1, which has been bad from Beyers Nordia up to Rivonia, stays very busy, and now a crash before you get to Malabongwe Drive. The N12, a collision at Atlas Road, very heavy coming through Benoni into Boksburg this morning, and the Mike 1 stays under lots of pressure from Boysons right the way through to Glenhove Road, and then up really to about Grayston Drive. So Boysons to Santon, it's pretty jammed all the way through. Durban motorists having a very extremely busy morning. There's flooding all over the show, flooding at Clarewood and Jacobs on the M4, also flooding at Bilo and Congela, so the M4 inbound is heavy. There's a breakdown on the N2 South coming down towards Mhlanga. That's heavy. Flooding going into Spaghetti Junction on the N2 South. That's a heavy backlog as well. And then you've got traffic lights out M7 at Bel Air, Wakesley, and the Mike 1, the Higginson Highway at the N2. Lights out there causing big delays as well. Cape Town, southern suburbs are pretty busy this morning. Rosebank direction coming up from Newlands up through the Rondebosch area. That main road up through Belmont Road into Rosebank, unusually heavy. And there's a lot of traffic jamming on the R300 today. You'll sit from Hindle Road all the way through to about the Van Riebeek off-ramp into Cales River and Stickland. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned, and almost 100,000 businesses trust Outsurance.
Switching to Outsurance has definitely saved me money, 2,107 rands per month. I would recommend Outsurance to all business owners because they will definitely save money. With Outsurance, you always get something out.
For your business insurance, contact Outsurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover, or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer in FSP. T's and C's online.
Time. When you're a kid, it moves slower than a sloth trying to get through airport security. There is just so much of it. Skip forward a few years to your 20s. Time is still your friend. It says have some balance. Go party and have fun. Then your 30s hit. And time suddenly steps on the accelerator like it's trying to catch a traffic light before it goes red. 40s. Now time is moving faster than your 10-year-old on a sugar high. 50. You're desperately trying to save as much as you can, but time is moving so fast. And all you can think is, where did all the time go? That's why after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money, and then money gives you more time for some much-deserved you time. Now, isn't that a compelling enough reason to invest? Ellen Gray, long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
Meet TJ, the magician. Well, he isn't quite the magician, but shame, let's call him that. The other day he tried to do that coin ear trick. Poor Owami is still in the hospital with a 5 rand coin stuck in his ear. He tried getting his pit bull, Mufasa, to levitate. Oh, he got that right. But now Mufasa is levitating through Tembisa, and somehow TJ forgot to read the section on how to get Mufasa back down. It's tough being a magician, but luckily for TJ, Britain's Got Talent Ultimate Magician will be the perfect inspiration for him to be the best magician in Tembisa. Catch Britain's Got Talent Ultimate Magician Saturdays at 7:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Hey neighbor, what happened to you last night? We were vibing, watching the game, and then our team scored, and the next thing you were gone.
Askies, I missed the goal. You know, just before our team scored, Eskom came and then our electricity was disconnected.
Yo, so much drama. What happened?
We got a fine for buying electricity tokens from an illegal vendor.
And then your fancy orange jumpsuit?
Oh, just in case I get arrested for not paying the fine, Pela.
Ungathatha chance. Buy your electricity legally. Stop buying electricity from illegal vendors and tampering with electricity meters.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
Let's touch base now with the SANParks Senior Communications Manager for the Cape Town region, Charles Patlane. And the reason we do that is because of the fires that are raging on Table Mountain, and we want an update from him. Charles, good morning and thank you for your time. So I saw the picture that you shared overnight as SANParks, or with a helicopter in the foreground and the fires on the slopes of Table Mountain in the background. To me, it didn't seem to give a proper perspective of what the fires are looking like, and perhaps you can give us that. Where do we stand in terms of trying to contain the fire this morning?
Well, yesterday, overnight, the wind conditions changed, and we had a strong gusting wind, which then spread the fire towards Tafelberg Road and Vredehoek. So the fire is now spreading towards that side, and we needed to deploy aerial resources this morning to deal with the fire.
Any concerns at this moment that properties in the area could be in danger?
At this stage, we don't have a sense that property could be in danger, but our firefighters are actively trying to contain the fire. The weather looks a bit better this morning, so we should be able to manage the fire.
And what are the implications for accessibility of the Table Mountain National Park as well as other activities across the stretch of Table Mountain?
Yes, we have closed several areas so that the front table trails, that is from Platteklip Gorge to Newlands, including McClare's Beacon, they remain off limits to the public. Tafelberg Road itself, we have closed to the public. The fire around Kirstenbosch and Rhodes Memorial Estate is very close to Kirstenbosch, so we have closed Newlands Forest as well. That's where we are at the stage.
And then tell me about the resources that you've deployed, both yourselves but also other agencies as well, that you've brought to bear. And are you confident that you've got enough resourcing to be able to bring this fire under control?
Yes, we work very well with other partners. We've got the City of Cape Town Fire and Rescue Services that works with us. We've got the Provincial Disaster Management, Enviro Wildfire Services, the Volunteer Wildfire Services, the NCC as well that assists us. So we've got a range of support, and where we need to, we can get additional aerial support from Stellenbosch as well, which does assist in attending to the fires.
All right, I've got to thank you for that update. That is Charles Patlane. He is SANParks Senior Communications Manager for the Cape Town region. At 8 a.m., and Musa on standby with the latest news.
In our top stories, bodies of 3 people recovered in Durban, and B20 aims for long-term business recommendations. Good morning. Emergency service teams have recovered the bodies of 3 people who were washed away in Lamontville in Durban following heavy overnight rains. The bodies of 3 other people are still missing. Search and rescue teams have been out since the early hours of this morning, responding to calls for help from areas in the south of the city and on the province's south coast. It's believed these 6 people were in an informal dwelling when they were washed away last night. Advanced Life Support paramedic Gareth Jameson.
This incident occurred in the early hours of this morning, and paramedics and Durban Metro Police and Durban SAPS search and rescue teams, together with the eThekwini Fire Department, searched the surrounding area. However, due to some dangerous conditions, it was a joint decision was made that all units will return at first light to resume the search.
The B20 says it wants to establish a pattern of implementable recommendations that extend beyond 2027. The Business 20 serves as the official G20 dialogue forum with the global business community. B20 Sherpa Cascovadias says they are working on this priority alongside their counterparts in the US. Covadias says business leaders will conduct talks in a manner that limits the set of recommendations that can be tracked. Speaking at the official launch of the B20 track meetings in Cape Town yesterday, he noted that while the focus is not on politics, they will continue to monitor the situation.
If the politics goes in a direction that makes it difficult to create an environment for businesses to do business, then we've got to say something about it, and we've got to say something about it in the recommendations we make to the G20 governments. But we'll see how that goes during the course of the year, and if we do need to include in our recommendations our concerns about the way politics are going, then we will do so.
The ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula will brief the media today on the appointment of the newly configured Gauteng Provincial Task Team. The briefing follows hot on the heels of a reconfigured KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Task Team that was announced yesterday. The decision follows the party's dismal performance in the 2024 national elections, which saw the ANC drop to 35% in Gauteng. Mbalula will outline the ANC's expectations of the Provincial Task Team, its mandate and its role in strengthening the ANC in Gauteng.
The reconfiguration is about strengthening the organization and respond to a situation where the party is in a dire situation, where in which we have not lost, but we have decreased. We have not just decreased, but we have lost the elections.
Authorities at the Cape Winelands District Municipality's fire services say only 2 of the 5 fires in the Witzenberg area are still active. Several crews have been battling fires in the area since last week. Municipality spokesperson Joanne Otter says no injuries or loss of property has occurred.
Fire teams have contained the fire line that was moving toward the Witzenberg Valley, and the pass was reopened there last night. Teams were also able to contain the line above the farm Skalkenbusch. However, the 2 lines above Landliebe and Boentjiesrivier, situated on the mountains between Tilbach and Mitchell's Pass, are still active. Monitoring and mopping up will continue on all contained lines, while teams will continue to work on the active lines as the fire becomes accessible.
The chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Defence, Dakota Lekwete, says the platform in which Lieutenant General Nchabeni Mapaha made his remarks regarding the SANDF deployment in the Democratic Republic of Congo was not correct and was uncalled for. The Lieutenant General referred to the National Defence Force as a Mickey Mouse Defence Force in the Free State during the funeral service of one of the deceased soldiers on Sunday. This after 14 South African soldiers were killed in the eastern DRC last month. Lekwete says these comments only serve to create anxiety and doubt.
A general or a senior officer like a general is a person of privilege and a person of interest in terms of intelligence language or military language. Now, for somebody of that senior level to say other things which are anti-establishment can lower the morale of our soldiers, and it can also further create a trust deficit between the state and its people. And unfortunately, is that some of these things are said in occasions which are not correct. When there's a funeral, we are mourning. We need to go there to console the bereaved family.
And finally, a delegation from AfriForum, Solidarity and the Solidarity Movement has met with representatives of the Trump administration in Washington. According to their statement, the delegation expressed gratitude to the Trump administration for highlighting alleged human rights violations against Afrikaners and what it referred to as the ANC's reckless policies and poor governance of the country. Recapping the top story, emergency service teams have recovered the bodies of 3 people who were washed away in Lamontville in Durban following heavy overnight rains. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Saw this yesterday, seen it again this morning in the sort of, the run through to Melrose, if you like, that side of Joburg. Caller Drive, Scott, Caller Drive at the mic one. There's some really heavy pressure yesterday coming out from Ilovo through Melrose, Burnham, getting across the highway was a nightmare, and getting back in this morning is really busy as well. William Mandela down to Santon Drive is quite slow. There's queues extending beyond Santon Drive down towards Hyde Park as well. So if you're heading that way, it's heavy. Lots of traffic on the N1 from 14th Avenue around to Ravonia Road. That's really slow go. And the broken down truck on the M1 South at Atterbury's being cleared, but it stays busy on the run coming down through from Montana side. Durban motorist having a real battle through the traffic this morning. The flooding on the M1 or the N2 South at Spaghetti Junction, plus a truck crash in amongst that flooding and in amongst the roadworks now. So the N2 from Queen Nandi Drive is horrible. You should be avoiding that. If you're looking for alternative routes, Chris Harney off the N2 is probably the best route. The Mslanga Rocks Drive and the M4 between Mslanga and Blue Lagoon are both heavily backed up. Flooding on the Southern Freeway inbound at Jacobs, Clarewood, and at Umbilo and Congela. So the M4 inbound's heavy, the M4 outbound also being affected by that. Cape Town, very busy. Southern suburbs, particularly Rondebosch, Milner Road up towards Klipfontein is heavy. Belmont through the main road is really bad. And the N7 North stays heavy from Goodwood up to that problematic Bosmansdam off ramp. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports headlines. It's soccer with Mamelodi Sundowns looking to tighten their grip on the PSL title race. They face Sekhukhune United. That's tonight in Polokwane. And in tennis, a VAR drama unfolded at the Dubai tournament. We'll bring you the details around 8:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Hey folks, good morning. It's just gone 8 minutes after 8 on this Wednesday. We are into the third hour of the Morning Brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane, and I'm here to deliver your morning brief. We had to move the conversation with Zimbali Mncube from the Institute for Economic Justice just slightly, and we'll be having it in the next few minutes. And the reason for that, of course, we wanted to bring you that update out of the city of Cape Town, SANParks in particular, who were updating us on the fire that's raging on Table Mountain. So we'll have that conversation now with Zimbali Mncube just on their proposals. The Institute for Economic Justice basically describing the now scrapped budget 2025, which was not delivered last week because many people saw it, because it was distributed, because it had been thought that it would be delivered by the finance minister at 2 p.m. last Wednesday, which then didn't happen, but people had sight of it. So the IEJ describes it as a worst of both worlds middle ground compromise that fails to chart a viable path. They then have alternatives that they suggest, particularly around the area of revenue. Zimbali will join us in a moment. Zimbali Mncube there will give us details on that. And then staying with issues to do with your money matters, get this. We are told by the independent economist Elise Kruger that about 15.8% of the country's salaried employees, salary earners, only 15.8% can afford a property that is valued at 1.3 million rand. A lot of factors come into play as to that unaffordability for many people who are employed and salaried. Elise Kruger will join us to give us more of those insights. Of course, on all of these matters, we are taking your calls. The number to dial is 086 000 2032. I'll also take your WhatsApp voice notes. Please send them to 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The third hour of the Wednesday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Outsurance has another random fact for you. In 1998, 500 grams of sugar cost about 3 rand. Now, it's about 20 rand. There's nothing sweet about how the cost of living has gone up. But even in times like these, Outsurance is committed to saving you money on your car insurance. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754 for a quick and easy way to save. Let's hear what Rosemary has to say about the saving on her 2019 Ford Figo.
I phoned into Outsurance to get a quote. They were super efficient, super quick. I'm saving 421 rand a month. I'll stick my neck out and tell them to phone Outsurance.
Enjoy life-saving services like Help It Out with 24/7 access to panic assistance, roadside assistance, and home assistance with just a tap on the app. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. Limits apply. T's and C's online.
S3 and Lorna Maseko are adding flavor to your Wednesday evenings. Lorna invites you on a journey of discovering new ways of transforming South African pantry staples into delectable and budget-friendly meals. From reimagining traditional South African dishes to infusing global inspirations, Lorna's inventive recipes and seasoned cooking tips inspire creativity and will empower viewers to navigate the kitchen with savvy resourcefulness. Tune into Lorna's Pantry, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
12 minutes after 8. So we are inching ever closer to the 12th of March, the new date now for the delivery of the Finance Minister's Budget Speech 2025. In the build-up to that, we've been hearing from the Institute for Economic Justice, who are proposing alternative measures to replace a controversial VAT hike in the country's 2025 budget. The IEJ has criticized the initially proposed 2 percentage point VAT increase, arguing that it would disproportionately affect the poorest households. Let's speak to Zimbali Mncube, who is a tax and budget policy researcher at the Institute for Economic Justice. Good morning to you, Zimbali, and thank you for your time. So in summary, you made a lot of points in your analysis of the budget that ended up not being delivered, but you then describe it as, quote, a worst of both worlds middle ground compromise that fails to chart a viable path, end quote. Why is it that you describe it in that way?
Good morning to Thulasizwe and good morning to SAFM listeners. I think we described it in that way because, one, it sort of attempts to reverse the historic budget cuts that we have seen over the years since 2012, in that allocations to education, healthcare, and other essential services are slightly on the positive, in that they are, when you take into account inflation, they increase positively at about 1% increases across the board. But at the same time, we see this VAT 2 percentage point hike, which essentially amounts to giving the poor on the one hand and taking on the other, because we know, as many commentators have shown in the previous days, that a VAT hike will disproportionately affect the poor. So although there are positives in the increase in grant allocations, in the end of the day, they will be eroded by a VAT hike. And studies show that the zero rating of good doesn't mitigate the impact that the hike has on consumers, especially low-income households.
So in the aftermath of the postponement of the budget, I guess the conversation has focused on, if you're not going to increase VAT and you feel you've reached a point where you really cannot effect any more cuts in terms of the services that are delivered by government, because the services are getting crippled, where will the money come from? And I want to run through, you've got a lot of these proposals in terms of how to generate revenue. There's one that you describe as most effective, least painful. And there you say there should be a building of the state's capacity to collect existing taxes. I believe the Commissioner of SARS would like you very much for that. Explain how that exactly would play into raising more revenue.
Yeah, no, I think the capacity of SARS, just like other departments and other entities in government, has been affected by budget cuts. And so there is an underfunding, which I think, as you say, the Commissioner rightly put it publicly in the media, of about between 17 to 20 billion, right? And we are saying that you cannot have improved tax compliance and curb illicit financial flows when you have a SARS that cannot fulfill its mandate, despite considerable progress over the years since the state capture years, and recently with the establishment of a net worth high individuals unit, which specifically targets the wealthy. You cannot bring about that additional revenue when our commissioner is saying that the entity needs more capacity, and I think that's where we need to start.
And then you also suggest that we do what we did not so long ago, draw further funds from the gold and foreign exchange contingency reserve account. And just to be clear, you're not saying we tap into our foreign reserves, but rather go into that account, what is accrued there, the interest that is accrued there. How much do you think we'd realize from that?
Yeah, and I think in the budget that was not published, they did indicate that they drawed upon 150 billion to pay down debt. So at this moment has about over 300 billion, right? And so we're saying that this can still be drawn down upon with, taking into account that you still need to have buffers for future interventions that may be needed in case of emergency. However, we feel that this money can be utilized as new capital expenditure that can help us spur employment and infrastructure development, and it can be ring-fenced in particular for that purpose, right? As opposed to just paying down debt. I think over the years what we have seen is that the budget cuts have been as a result of this narrow fixation on a primary budget surplus, which is essentially chasing that revenue is more than expenditure, right? And this has resulted in budget cuts. And this is what we are seeing informing the current strategy in the budget. And we're saying that needs to change beyond the revenue proposal we're putting forward.
All right. And then briefly just talk to two of the other proposals that you've put on the table. We don't have time to go through all of them, but two that I find quite interesting as well. You have proposals around increasing VAT on luxury goods, and you're saying that from that we can realize quite a significant amount, as well as the proposals you are making around corporate tax. What needs to happen with those two?
Yeah, we're saying a luxury VAT is a more targeted form of VAT to high-income earners, and it can raise about 9 billion annually at 25%, right? And so this is much more pro-poor, and it's something that ensures that the wealthy pay their fair share. As to the corporate income tax, we saw that there was a decrease from 28% to 27% in its rate. However, we feel that there hasn't been evidence presented as to what investment has this brought about. So we're saying that this needs to be reversed back to 28%. And these are measures that can be taken immediately alongside medical tax credits and other measures that can be done as soon as possible, so that by the 12th we know that we have sources of revenue that can be plugged in to support our priorities.
To be clear, as far as the luxury VAT, you are talking about going from 15% to 25% on luxury goods.
Yes, particularly on luxury goods. So speaking about watches, yachts, etc., etc.
Yeah, all right. A lot of people who can afford those things will not be so pleased. Thank you for your time this morning. That is Zimbali Mncube, who is a tax and budget policy researcher at the Institute for Economic Justice.
Over the last 50 years, one man has played an unparalleled part in transforming British society. This man is Rupert Murdoch. Feared by politicians, Murdoch has built the biggest media operation on the planet. His empire has given him extraordinary power and influence. The rise of the Murdoch family is an electrifying study of the Murdoch dynasty, charting the ups and downs of an empire. From the ambition that fueled its success, to the criminality that led to the closure of the News of the World and the Leveson Inquiry. This is The Rise of the Murdoch Family. Thursdays at 10 p.m. starts 13 February, only on S3.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAFM. Leading the conversation.
So let's tell you this story now. The independent economist Elise Kruger has raised a concern about the reality of South Africa's property affordability. Data shows that only 15.8% of the country's salary earners can afford a property valued at 1.3 million rand. Elise Kruger joins us now. She's an independent economist. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. What's driving the inability of so many South Africans to afford even modestly priced homes?
Good morning. Yes, this is working off the data of Banks of Africa, specifically the take-home pay data. So if you look at salaries after deductions, and I've been tracking this for Banks of Africa over time, and it was an interesting question from journalists to say how many South Africans could actually afford such a property. So that was good to look at the data in a bit of a different angle. And what I now found is if you then work on the needed take-home pay of about 30,000 Rand to afford such a property, and you work that out as a percentage of the number of salaries of people earning that and above, you get to that number that you mentioned, the 16%. I just wanted to maybe give a bit more color to, a couple of assumptions one should take into account here. I think this is the assumption that a single salary earner will buy a property. And you would need, say, then a gross salary per month of 40,000 Rand. But say there's a couple, husband and wife together, then you can actually drop that amount and say each will have to take home or have a gross earning of, say, less than that. So I'm thinking 20,000, but then again, one should think about the disposable income of a 20,000 salary is different to a 40,000 salary. But point is just that, this numbers have been based on a single person buying. But typically you will have in the economy families, pulling funds together to buy a property. So from that point of view, the percentage could be higher, could be 25 to 30% if you incorporate two salaries for the purchase of the property. But I think the point is still that, our average salaries as we see it, is not so or high enough to widen that net in the property market. Or one could also maybe add the angle that our interest rates are quite high in South Africa at current levels. So this calculation has been done on an 11% prime rate. So say we can drop that prime rate to 10%, and then you will have a lot more of the salary earners, being able to afford that property.
Yeah.
So it's a couple of moving parts, to get to the answer. But I think the overall basically angle that I see here is that, a fairly small percentage can afford to have a property in their own name as opposed to renting.
Sure. Elise, this flies in the face, of course, of the data that you cited that says in as far as take-home pay is concerned, it has increased, and the figure there is 7.9%, which is said to be the highest increase in recent years. So if take-home pay is on the up, but we still can't afford, what does that say about the property market at the moment, especially residential property market? Is it that the property market is difficult in that prices are high, or is it these factors that you just alluded to about our own affordability?
Yes, I think it's a bit of both, if I had to say. So we have seen the Banks of Africa take-home pay index rising over the last year. The figure you mentioned there is 7.9%, but that really still got us to an average of about 16,000, say 500. And we have just spoken about the need of a 30,000 take-home pay to be able to afford that. So I think it's on both sides. So the economy has gone through a difficult 2 years prior to 2024. You'll recall that we had lots of load shedding in 23, and we had high inflation numbers. So lots of economic headwinds in the 2 years prior to 2024, the data that we talk about here. And, for that reason, salaries have also lagged. We have not seen salaries keeping up with inflation in 2022 and 23. So from that point of view, salary earners have been under pressure. And for that reason, it's been difficult to afford to buy a property and rather going to the rental market.
And you make the point as a parting shot, Elise, that all of this, we may be talking microfinances and personal affordability and the likes, but it has linkages to the macro picture as far as stimulating economic growth. Just tell me about your expectations going forward as far as GDP is concerned, and how that would translate to more and more South Africans being able to afford such needs as being able to buy a home.
Yes, indeed. So on the macro front, I do expect that economic growth in this year will be higher, in the order of about 1.7% growth compared to last year's fairly dismal outcome, which will be around sort of 0.7-ish. So that should help, in terms of, on the one side, companies' ability to, afford better salary increases. on the one side, and on the other, it should hopefully also stimulate job creation, that we can have more jobs in the economy, and that will enable more people to earn salaries that could open the door for owning a property. And perhaps one should also add here that, if I look at the average take-home pay, actually the new data will be coming out today, which is also a further uptick in the number. But just to say that, the average would suggest that people could afford or more people could afford smaller properties, be it a flat maybe or so. So we've worked on the 1.3 million as an average property price. But obviously there's a range below that, and then that would also broaden the net, that more people could afford smaller properties.
Elise, thank you for your time this morning. Before you go, what did you make of my attempt to properly pronounce your surname, Kruger, as opposed to Kruger?
Krier. Yes,
Krier.
So I don't mind Kruger, but in Afrikaans it's Krier. I always, if I need to give a spelling, I said, remember the Kruger Nationale Park,
yes,
the Kruger National Park. Everybody knows that one.
Yeah.
And that always is a good,
Thank you for your time this morning. Elise Kruger, an independent economist.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Let me quickly take one or two of your voice notes that have come through. The one on the suggestions that have been made by the Gauteng Premier, Panyaza Lesufi, that the province will start making Mandarin as well as Swahili available as subjects in schools in Gauteng. Let me hear what you've had to say about that.
In Thulasizwe. So my name is Owen Fuchane, and I'm studying Mandarin in Grooteskier High School, and it's actually a really good subject with how China is getting stronger, having stronger relationship with China. So yeah, we're learning everything about Mandarin, the language, and with the culture, and with that I still get to keep my indigenous language within the school. Thank you.
Perfect. Ni hao. I suppose is all I can say, or should I say after that call, Sheshe. Let's hear what someone else has to say about that.
Good morning, Thulas. Thulas, the Premier is smoking something these days, something really strong. He needs to afagi. All I can say is that we don't have enough teachers. That money that he wants to spend to pay for teachers to teach Mandarin and Swahili, he must take that same money and pay our teachers here in South Africa to teach us the 11 official languages and get it over and done with. Thank you, Machozi.
Machozi, thank you for that. Yeah, the conversation about the resources that it will take to introduce this. I suppose we would need the Premier to really expand a bit further. He had said he would talk about it in his State of the Province address, but unless I missed it, I didn't catch this particular bit. So it would be interesting to hear what the exact proposals are, how exactly to fund it, and what kind of partnerships perhaps could be leveraged to make this happen. Let's check in with N. Musa now with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us in the headlines. The neighbours of the 6 people who were washed away in Lamontville during last night's heavy rains say they are shocked. Emergency service teams have recovered the bodies of 3 of the 6 people. The B20 says it wants to establish a pattern of implementable recommendations that extend beyond 2027. The Business 20 serves as the official G20 dialogue forum with the global business community. And Israeli warplanes have struck a number of targets in Syria, including military positions south of the capital, Damascus. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Joburg Z1 North not having much success this morning. An earlier breakdown after Winnie Mandela, a crash before Malapongwe. They've all been cleared, but as soon as traffic started to move, there's another breakdown before Winnie Mandela. N1 North coming through from Bayers Nordia stays very heavily backed up. Crash on the Mike 1 South at Marlborough Drive. Delays coming off the N1 through Buccleuch in towards Sandton. A lot of traffic this morning between Boysons and Sandton on the run going north as well. Pretoria, the N1 South from Storamfull Road down towards Linwood busy, but it is starting to move on. Big traffic on Esky and Pathlani into Pretoria CBD down through Marabastad, if that's your route. Plenty of traffic delays there. Durban motorists have had a bit of a nightmare negotiating all the flooding. There's Only one lane open due to flooding into South at Spaghetti Junction. A very heavy queue from Queen Nandi Drive. In fact, Slangerock's Drive is heavy. The M4 South from Slung is heavy. Right in the middle of all that, you've got a little gap on Chris Harney through Durban North over Connell Bridge. It does get busy at Connell Bridge, but it'll probably get you into Durban quicker than any of those other routes coming in from the north. Well, flooding on your way out towards Claremont, New Germany before Dunkeld Road, the M19 under pressure. Flooding at Congela inbound on the M4, Clarewood southbound on the M4, so delays there. And a crash at Pavilion Mall. If you're coming in from Pinetown, it's a heavy queue from the M13, Paradise Valley. Cape Town Marine Drive, still queuing down in towards Boundary Road. No traffic lights. Hill, Basson and Bosmansdam. A lot of congestion around that part of Cape Town this morning. And the highways are fairly busy, particularly the M3, which is queued up from Constantia right through to Hospital Bend. Might be a bit of onlooking at the fires that are burning in the mountains above Newlands. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Is it fair to say, Zai, that we are now in the business end of the title race and almost every match is going to feel like a cup final, isn't it?
Yes.
You can't afford, and that's the mentality for Mamelodi Sundowns as they take on Sekhukhune this evening.
Yeah, and they want to extend that lead to 15, but Sekhukhune United is standing in their way. So I don't know, Thulas, if it's going to be a potential upset or business as usual for Sundowns. You know, it's Sundowns. The juggernaut just doesn't stop. But yes, Sekhukhune United is whom they face at the old Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane. Kickoff is at 7:30 p.m. Mamelodi Sundowns have bounced back spectacularly since being dealt with their second loss in the league at the hands of TS Galaxy, and that was in early Feb. They have won their last two league fixtures, scoring 7 goals and only conceding 2. They currently enjoy a 12-point lead over title challengers Orlando Pirates, who still have 3 games in hand. Now, Sekhukhune United move into 3rd place in the Betway Premiership after defeating Chippa United 1-0, and that was a closely contested affair over the weekend. In the meantime, AmaZulu have parted ways with one of their co-coaches, Vusimuzi Vilakazi. According to the club statement, Vilakazi has resigned because of personal matters. In the meantime, Banyana made it 2 wins from 2 against Lesotho, beating the same opponents 1-0 over the weekend. It was a youthful South African side that put in a much improved performance in the second match yesterday with a 2-0 victory. Here's the Banyana coach, Desiree Ellis.
We almost sort of took the foot off the pedal, and while we were playing we said we need a second goal just to calm us down and to give us that little bit of breathing space. But we can take our hats off to these young girls. It's not easy for them so early playing 2 top level games like this, and you could see towards the end of the game, last 20 minutes or so, there were a lot of tired legs, but we're happy with the growth and the progress this week.
Rugby now. John Dobson says Stephen Kitchoff's retirement and a poor profile of loose head props leaves the Stormers with no choice but to dip into the market for a new number 1. Kitchoff's return home in July 2024 after a brief stint at Ulster was meant to see the 2-time World Cup winner and URC winning skipper finish his career at the Stormers. However, a serious neck injury for the Western Province late last year led to surgery, and the 33-year-old has now called it quits on medical grounds. England, their captain Jos Buttler says his future as skipper may be on the line against Afghanistan in the Champions Trophy match today. England know they must win the Group B match in Lahore to avoid being eliminated from the competition, but where they go out will be a 3rd disappointing white ball tournament in a row after they failed defences of the 50 and 20 overs World Cups, and that was in 2023 and 2024 respectively. And finally, tennis. A VAR drama unfolded at the Dubai tennis tournament between Felix Auger-Aliassime and Alexander Bublik. Bublik thought he had won a crucial point as the players were locked 6-6 in the first set tiebreak when Auger-Aliassime requested a VAR review because a ball kid had hindered his attempt to play a shot. After a heated exchange between the players, the on-court umpire Miriam Blay announced that the point should be replayed before Bublik hit an underarm ace on his second serve. And that's how we wrap up your morning sport on the Morning Brief. More action with John Heliker at 12:30, serving up the latest sport. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Good morning to you once again in Dowling. I did see this report and I saw a lot of people commenting on it. This report that talks about European, particularly German car makers versus Asian, particularly Chinese car makers. Tell me about that competition and how the European car makers are losing their edge in South Africa.
It's really caught many by surprise, but I mean, when you look on the roads, we are seeing more of these Asian cars on our roads recently. And over the past decade, the Business Tech article noted that South Africa's luxury car market, particularly the cars from Europe, have experienced a decline, with prospective vehicle owners turning to more affordable options like cars from Asia. Now, this trend is reflected in the sales numbers, which reveal a 68% drop in demand for luxury cars over the past 10 years. In 2014, brands like Audi, BMW, Mini, and Mercedes-Benz collectively sold just over 74,000 vehicles in the country. By the end of last year, this number plunged to 23,881. Merck suffered the most decline, with sales dropping by 82% to just over 5,000 units sold last year. Audi and BMW followed with declines of 70% and 50% respectively. In contrast, of course, Asian car brands like Chery, Haval, and Suzuki have delivered growth over the same period. Collectively, these brands sold just over 8,000 vehicles in 2014. 10 years later, those number of units surged to 89,416. Suzuki leading the gains on that front, with sales increasing from 6,402 to 56,109 units sold. Now, the National Automobile Dealers Association attributes the shift in South Africa's car market to increasing price sensitivity, saying buyers are opting for affordable options. However, NADA notes that Asian brands' long-term success hinges on factors like running costs, reliability, and resale value. Interestingly, in a Business Day article earlier this month, BMW South African CEO Peter van Binsbergen confirmed that car manufacturers in SA, particularly European car manufacturers, will ask the government for assistance. They want to turn unused import credits into cash to reduce production costs and lower car prices. Now, they'll be approaching the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition with that plan.
No, the numbers are quite stark. The gains and losses, respectively, quite stark and quite, alarming. Talk to me about local tourism. The sector you're saying is getting a boost. It got a boost in January.
That's right, Thulas. This comes as more people traveled to South Africa in January. Now, last month, South Africa welcomed about 1.3 million foreign visitors, marking a 4.6% increase from the same month last year. This growth was largely driven by increased arrivals from overseas markets and African countries, particularly those within SADC. According to economist at Investec, Lara Hodes, the growth in tourist arrivals is a positive sign for the economy. She further pointed to visa reforms as another positive factor. Now, Hodes noted that initiatives like the Digital Trusted Tour Operator Scheme visa will make it easier for travelers from countries like India and China to visit South Africa. Now, the total number of visitors comprised over 1 million overnight tourists and 260,000 same-day visitors. Overseas tourists accounted for just over 210,000 of total arrivals, with Europe dominating overseas arrivals at 67.8%.
Lastly, Dowling, what kind of Wednesday can we look forward to on the markets?
So we're likely to see another upbeat start for local markets as sentiment continues to improve, but volatility still remains as traders' eye moves out of the White House. Now, in terms of company news, investors will be waking up to numbers from AECI and Bidcorp. Meanwhile, on the currency front, the rand losing steam and trending slightly weaker at 18.42 to the dollar. Then over in Wall Street, futures are in the green. All eyes, though, are on Nvidia as the group prepares to release its fourth quarter earnings report later on today. Then over in Asia, markets trending higher and likely to close in positive territory, and this despite downbeat economic data out of the U.S. overnight.
Remember the conversation you and I had yesterday about unclaimed dividends. Yes, so
Yes.
stand by and take a listen. We will have a conversation shortly. We'll take that forward. Unfortunately, I don't think, well, speaking for myself, I'm not one of those people who are entitled to that 4.5 billion rand. Are you?
I'm going to listen just in case. Maybe there's
Just in case. Thank you for that. That's Ntauling Lechela. She's kept you updated on the economy, business, and the markets here on the Morning Brief over the last 2.5 hours.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
As I said to Ntauling, we started this conversation yesterday and we've been intrigued by it. So we thought we'd follow it up and take it forward. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange has launched a new initiative to help South Africans discover if they are owed any unclaimed dividends. The campaign aims to reunite citizens with a portion of the 4.5 billion rand in unclaimed funds. The initiative is a partnership between the JSE and 19 prominent companies that are listed on the stock exchange. Let's speak now to Vuyo Lee, who is the Director for Marketing and Corporate Affairs at the JSE. Good morning to you and thank you for your time. How is this even possible that there's 4.5 billion rand in unclaimed dividends and people have not come forward to claim them? What are the factors?
Thank you, Thulasizwe, and good morning to everybody. There are mainly four factors that drive the number of unclaimed dividends, Thulasizwe. The first one is banking details. So you have people who have purchased shares, the dividends have been declared, and then they get paid into a bank account. It's an old account, and it bounces back. The second reason is education. It's actually amazing how many people forget they actually purchase shares, or they're not aware that their shares pay dividends, how often dividends get paid. And part of our drive is to really educate people about how dividends work. The third reason is, once the banking details bounce back, it is difficult to find these people. Their addresses have changed. They've changed their place of employment. They're really difficult to locate. Some people had schemes, they resigned, they retired, and those dividends remain unpaid. And then the last reason, which touches about 20% of the base, is deceased estates, where you find that a member of the family had purchased shares, hasn't told anybody, it's not in the will. Also, it's difficult to locate their beneficiaries. So what this campaign tries to do is to address each and every one of these four factors by asking members of the public to come forward and check. So the lady earlier on said she doesn't know if it's her. It could be anybody.
Yeah, it could be
because
Ntauling.
those factors are in play. Yes, Ntauling, please claim it and check.
So, but the bigger picture though, Vuyo, is that in the broader universe of unclaimed assets, here we're talking 4.5 billion rand, and this is dividends from listed companies. But in the broader universe, the number is even bigger.
Absolutely. So the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, which is our regulator, has estimated that assets are about 88 billion. This includes pension benefits, funeral benefits, investments that have matured. So out of those 88 billion assets, 4.5 billion, probably close to 5 now because the report was released in 2022, have got unclaimed dividends.
So one of the aspects you touched on is the need for education, and you used you said, it's amazing how many people actually forget that they bought shares and don't know how dividends work. Is this particularly pronounced in light of recent empowerment schemes, those share offerings to the public that perhaps take 5, 7 or whatever years to get to a point where a person can trade those shares or even realize dividends? Is that part of the equation?
Well, it's prominent across the board. So I'll give you an example. In 1999, one of the issuers that are participating, it's an insurance company, Old Mutual. They had they dematerialized and they gave all their customers at that point shares. Now, some of those customers may have been difficult to locate, and those shares are waiting for them. And while they're waiting for them, they're getting they're accruing unclaimed dividends. There's also the education element where people don't understand that dividends shares pay dividends. And you are right, most of that will probably sit with the BEE share schemes that were issued in about early 2000, right? And what we find is that some of the schemes or people that claim the dividends go as far back as 15 years, and it's those particular schemes. So as part of our initiative, which is 3 years long, we are spending 3 years investing in education, providing content and videos on websites, on our social media to educate. And as the year goes by, we'll also look at other media to do this education.
So lastly, then, tell me what exactly you are doing with these 19 major companies that are listed to try and address this issue, and how do people, at the very least, check in the comfort of their homes without worrying about the disappointment of walking into an office and then to be told face to face that no, you're not one of the one of the potential beneficiaries?
It's very easy to Thulasizwe, and that's why I'm encouraging listeners to go to our website. It is jse.co.za /claim-it. And what you can do is you enter your details on our portal, our Claim-it portal, and within 3 to 5 minutes, you'll receive an email to let you know whether or not you have unclaimed dividends. Once you have been confirmed, there is a QR code or a link where you can go in and provide a proof of address, proof of banking, as well as a copy of your ID. And within 5 to 7 working days, it will be verified and the payment made.
Well,
it's really that easy.
Yeah.
For deceased estates, it goes one step further. We will need a letter of the executor confirming that you are the beneficiary. You also will need a death certificate, and then we'll request the beneficiary to provide the ID, banking details, and proof of address. Now, Thulasizwe, the most important thing for listeners to know is that the JSE and its 19 issuers will never contact them. We'll never phone them to say you've got unclaimed dividends.
Really?
We
Yeah.
won't ask you for your banking details or your ID number, because we are very well aware that we operate in a landscape where there is fraud. So our objective is to encourage people to claim and provide their supporting documents in a safe environment.
Yeah, so the initiative will
as
have to come from them. You will not be
Yes.
contacting them.
We won't be contacting you for now, because we do realize that,
Gotcha.
there are impersonators. Somebody can say that from the JSE. You don't know that.
Thank you for your
So
time. this
that's why they should go to the website, jse.co.za.
Well, now we know what my next activity exactly at 9 o'clock, 2 minutes past 9. I'll be on that website. Vuyo Lee is the Director for Marketing and Corporate Affairs at the JSE.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Coming to Pretoria this morning, SKM Paflani Drive is heavy. As you turn off the Mopari Highway, you get to sort of Thunderhof and then a run down through Marabastad, very slow going. Joburg Z1 North, a breakdown at Winnie Mandela, very heavy coming out from Beyers Nordia. Behind that, a lot of congestion on Beyers Nordia and Malabongwe Drive, trying to get into the highway. Crash on the Mike 1 South at Marlborough Drive, slowing traffic from Buccleuch interchange as well. Durban, the heavy delays continue into south, flooding going into Spaghetti Junction. For most of the morning, you've only had a single lane through there, and that's why the traffic's so horribly backed out to Queen Nandi Drive. Off-ramp at Queen Nandi, or off-ramp preferably at Chris Hani, and use the run-in over Connaught Bridge if you need to get into Durban. The N3 inbound, a crash by Pavilion Mall. That's queuing traffic coming off the M13 and the N3 through Paradise Valley. And flooding on the M4, it must be quite extreme. Southbound at Clarewood has been queuing since about 5 o'clock this morning on that M4 Southern Freeway, and delays coming out of Umlazi out to Mega City. Some disruption there following last night's big storm as well. Cape Town, if you're leaving Komaki, is quite acute at Masi Pumalela. The N1 inbound has a crash just after Marine Drive. Now, you'll get a double whack here. The N1 inbound queues to Plattercliff Road, so that's heavy. But all of that traffic coming along that Marine Drive is now pretty solid through Milnerton, Pardon Island. You'll struggle to get off Marine Drive and into the N1. You're basically turning into that crash scene. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
All right, let's make the most of the remaining minutes. Earlier on, we had a conversation about the ANC announcing 67 members of a provincial task team to lead its structure in KwaZulu-Natal. Let's hear what you've had to say about that structure that has been announced, as well as the moves afoot to do exactly the same in Gauteng.
Morning, Maguja. I'm just asking myself why this reconfiguration was not actually implemented at the national level, but only the two provinces. Because the ANC did not actually do well in all the provinces, which means that even the national or at the national level, there is a problem. Thank you. It's Andy in KZN. Bye.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And many people have asked that question. I suppose, if I'm hearing the arguments from the ANC correctly, they are talking about how important those two provinces are to their electoral performance. Perhaps the calculation is that if we had done well in KZN and Gauteng, we should have been just fine in terms of the overall picture. But you're not the only one to be asking, why not reconfigure everyone, including the national leadership?
Morning to us, it's Chris in Maritzburg. At the bottom of this discussion of languages is the whole issue of identity, that many scientists are already complaining that this generation is losing their self-identity. So we cannot take it out. So how does it shape the people's identity as they grow up while they're at school? I would therefore support the idea that let's focus more on our indigenous languages and then have these as extras that people can choose later in their life. But the greatest focus should be on our indigenous languages.
I like the link that you make there between language and identity, Chris. And I think I've told the story before that someone on my social media feeds was talking not so long ago about having Umgidi, one of these ceremonies in the Eastern Cape, a few years from now, and everyone will be speaking in English. I laugh, but it's not funny. That whole thing of just the undue and disproportionate dominance of English in many of these spaces. I do remember someone saying something like that. But of course, the flip side, Chris, as well, is that someone might say the identity that will be fostered by these languages is one of, a citizen who is who's able to operate globally, who's connected to the African continent, to the rest of the world in terms of their ability to operate and interact with other people. Cosmopolitan is the word that I'm looking for. Sizwe in Gqeberha, good morning to you. You want to talk to me about liberation movements?
Yes. I was listening to your guest. I think it was Prof.
Ngomezulu, yes.
Prof. Ngomezulu who talked about the threats and the liberation movement. But in my view, I think the biggest threats with liberation movements, first of all, let's understand that they come and go. But the biggest threat is corruption that ultimately leads to poor government. If you look at our ANC, the South African people have always loved the ANC. They've been very patient with the ANC. But the ANC has been declining. Look from President Mandela right through, it has been declining. Just like the other liberation movements, it has to come and go. Unfortunately, if I would ask you a question, can you be able to cleanse the cancer of corruption in the ANC? In my view, definitely not. That's what makes to lose touch with ordinary people. And unfortunately, it cannot be helped. That's the harsh reality. And one other thing,
yes,
it's politics. The politics of liberation movements, they don't resonate with the youth. And I think they should focus more on educating the youth. Because they don't resonate. And the youth is the future.
Sizwe, let me ask you, let me just engage you a little bit on that. In terms of trying to cure the cancer of corruption in liberation movements, in the South African instance, in the ANC, I've heard the line that says, better fewer, but better. So that shift that says, it doesn't matter, we don't need to be a mass movement anymore. We can have fewer members as long as we have quality members. Would that not help them?
Look, let me be honest with you, Sizwe. If you're trying to cleanse corruption in the ANC, you're killing it more. Look at the many people who think that they are being pursued legally, who have jumped ship to the MK. Because to them, they feel that they're being treated unfairly.
I see.
Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So this has always been the culture that, look, we entitled to look from the coffers of the state because we liberated them. That's very unfortunate.
Sure.
You know, and it's going to be worse because even the SACP now is jumping ship. They are going to, contest elections independently.
Sizwe,
Killing the liberation movement worse.
Let's leave it there for this morning. That's Sizwe in Gqeberha. Bonagele in Khayelitsha, good morning to you. You want to talk to me about the SANDF?
Absolutely. Very good morning to us. Listen, I'm referring to the to Lieutenant, is it Pahama?
Mapaha, yes.
Mapaha. I suspect, I'm thinking, and I was listening to when he was talking there. I think that guy is sick and tired of working for a defense force. So he's applying for what is said to be a dismissal, so to speak. Perhaps, if I may ask you, is this lieutenant being suspended or not suspended yet?
I'm not aware of him being suspended, but I did see commentary to the effect that there's going to be some kind of follow-up on his comments. But to be honest, I don't have the details, yeah.
Absolutely, a disciplinary hearing. It's something that it deserves. And when it gets there, if I was going to ask him, do you want to resign after saying whatever that you said there, your behavior and the comment? You want to resign by yourself, or you want to be dismissed? You must choose.
Quite harsh.
Honestly speaking, they were speaking about Mickey Mouse. I mean, criticizing your employer or whatever, your department, so to speak, the way you spoke. So it doesn't deserve to be there. Especially the senior.
But the content of his message, do you agree with the content of his message? A lot of people are saying what he's saying is the truth.
But, well, he might be right, but that platform where you are, it's absolutely wrong.
Okay.
So that's why I say it deserves to be punished very harsh.
Let's leave it there.
The punishment, therefore, to be dismissed.
All right. Let's leave it there. Bonagele in Khayelitsha. Mulatelo in Limpopo, good morning to you. What do you want to say about Sentin this morning?
Yeah, good morning. How are you, Sizwe? Sizwe, how are you?
Yes, I'm well. Mulatelo, you want to talk about the SANDF?
Yes, I want to talk about this thing, because, look, Davuta Lehwete, I think the man he has never been a soldier. He's just a politician. And it's very unfortunate that the country still continue to be led by the people who have not a skill of what their portfolio are meant to. Look, Brigadier Mapanga was right on the spot. The man is a soldier. The soldier in his blood, in his soul, and he put South Africa first. I mean, this thing, we cannot continue to close our eyes because of the politicians. Our boundary is poor. People just come and go like nothing is happening because of the politician. And then, look, I understand that the SANDF has been gone to Congo with the mandate of a United Nations. That is a mandate. But the statement that Brigadier Mapanga issued is to say South Africans, and he said what we know, we South Africans. He said what we see every day as South Africans. I can give you an example of what
I'm out of time, Mulatelo, but I do get the point that you are making, and thank you for making that point. And that's really the beauty of it all. The one caller was pulling in one direction, and immediately after that, you had someone else pulling in exactly the opposite direction. This is what I mean when I say let 100 schools of thought contend. That's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Morning Brief. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your engagement. The Talking Point with Kethi Mutlatlana is up next after the news here on SAFM.
In our top stories, 3 bodies recovered following heavy rains in KZN and Wits response to students' hunger strike. Good morning. The neighbours of the 6 people who were washed away in Lamontville during last night's heavy rains say they are shocked. Emergency service teams have recovered the bodies of 3 of the 6 people. This neighbour recalls the heavy rains that started around 10 o'clock last night.
What happened, it really shocked me. It was around 11:30, if I'm not mistaken. The time I heard my neighbors shouting and stuff, but the water was already in the house. Some of the people, they tried to escalate, but it was too late because the water was so high. So, and it seems like this rain is continuing. It's going to be hard for the people because most of the houses have been damaged.
Sandparks will be deploying aerial resources to the Cape Town City Bowl and Red Hill as firefighters battle escalating wildfires in the Table Mountain National Park. Sandparks says gusting winds overnight led to the spread of the fire that started at the Newlands Ravine on Sunday. Spokesperson JP Lowe says all their available resources, including from working on fire, the City of Cape Town and the Provincial Disaster Management, have been diverted to sections along Tafelberg Road, Red Hill and Ocean View. Lowe says hiking trails remain closed for safety. A former police officer has been convicted by the Pretoria High Court for murdering his girlfriend. 40-year-old Khabo Ramotla fatally shot 29-year-old Lisbeth Siloma at the couple's residence in Mamelodi, east of Pretoria in 2017. The NPA spokesperson Lumka Mahanjana says the matter has been postponed to April for sentencing.
The constable shot and killed his girlfriend with his service pistol because she was breaking up with him and wanted to move out of their home. In court, he pleaded not guilty to the charges. However, the state presented compelling evidence